I'd like to call the September 28, 2021 Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. We'll start with agenda item 1A, the roll call. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernard. Mayor Kerner.
Here.
Commissioner Marino.
Here.
Commissioner McKinley.
Here.
Commissioner Sacks. Vice Mayor Weinroth. Commissioner Wise.
Here.
Thank you.
Very good. We do have a quorum with 4 county commissioners present here in the chambers. We'll move now to agenda item 1B and C, invocation and pledge of allegiance. If you could please join me in rising as Commissioner Marino leads us in both items.
Dear God, we are thankful for this day that you have given us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. We pray for strength and guidance for each day as it comes, for each day's duties, for each day's problems. May we be challenged to give our best always, and may we be assured of your presence with us. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Commissioner Marino, you recognize for a motion.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. May I please make a motion that Commissioner Mac Bernard participate remotely?
Second.
Very good. We have a motion by Commissioner Marino, seconded by Commissioner Weiss, consistent with the board rules that require an affirmative vote by the board to allow Commissioner to participate fully in voting and discussion through technology such as WebEx or telephone. In this instance, Commissioner Bernard does meet those requirements, and the motion's been made and seconded. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries 4-0. From this point forward, Commissioner Bernard will be able to participate fully in the proceedings. Agenda item 2A, additions, deletions, and substitutions to the agenda. Mr. Assistant County Administrator Bonlaren. Oh, very good. I can't see you. I apologize. Madam Administrator, you're recognized.
That's fine. I don't know what happened to the camera, but we have no additions, deletions, or substitutions this morning, Mayor and members of the board.
Very good. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as published?
So moved.
The motion by Commissioner Weiss, second by Commissioner Sacks, to approve the agenda as published. No further discussion. All in favor, all opposed. That item passes 5-0. And just to let the clerk reflect that we have Commissioner or Vice Mayor Weinroth absent, and Commissioner Sacks is here now, so the vote would be 6-0. My apologies. We'll move now to the regular agenda, which starts and is found on page 2 and 3. 3A, Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller. I don't have any public comment cards on this item.
Mayor, I'd like to move item 3A, 1 and 2.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Weiss on 3A1. We'll just take them separately for a motion to receive and file the warrant list, seconded by Commissioner Sacks. No public comment or comments by members of the board. All in favor? All opposed? 3A1 passes 6-0. Commissioner Weiss?
I'd like to move item 3A2 for approval.
A motion by Commissioner Weiss on 3A2, motion to approve contracts and claim settlement, seconded by Commissioner Sacks. There's no further comments by members of the board. All in favor? All opposed? 3A2 passes 6-0. We'll move now to 3B, facilities developments and operations. Would any commissioner appreciate a presentation on this item?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions or comments of Isame or her staff?
No, I think we're good.
Is there a motion?
Mayor, go ahead. Mayor, I'd like to move item B1A to approve the First Amendment to an interlocal agreement with the City of Boca Raton for the construction and management of a communications tower, modifying the legal description of the ingress and egress for the tower site, allowing the county to make the right to remove any existing trees and landscaping within the said area and to make any necessary driveway improvements, maintain access to the tower site, and 3, terminating the current temporary construction easement and access and management easement agreement.
Second.
Commissioner Weiss has moved agenda item 3B1, A, B, C, and D forward, seconded by Commissioner Marino. I don't have any comments by members of the public or by members of the board. All in favor? All opposed? The item passes 6-0. Thank you very much. We'll move now to the regular agenda and agenda item 3B.
Just to clarify, this is for item B1, A, B, C, and D.
Yes, sir. Very
Okay,
good.
Just clarifying that.
I think that concludes the regular agenda at this time. So we will now move to the workshop portion of our agenda today, with the first one being 4A, advisory boards, which will be led by Assistant County Administrator Bon Laren.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, Administrator Baker. We have in front of you a PowerPoint, if you'd like to follow along, that we've put one in front of you, as well as some backup that includes just a current directory of our boards and committees that I put up there for some additional background for you. First off, I want to say thank you to Bob Banks from the County Attorney's Office, and also joining me here is Cindy Bedreau from County Administration, who many of you know handles a lot of our boards and also coordinates our agenda. So thank you, Cindy, for assisting this morning. So wanted to start off maybe with a little bit of fun this morning on our second slide that we have up there. And just to kind of, this cute little slide sums up this agenda. The agenda for this meeting is to try to figure out why we're having this meeting. And I think what happened earlier in this year, a couple of our board members and understanding that we do have quite a number of boards and committees and task forces and authorities that this board participates in and our staff anticipate, wanted us to go back and dig in a little bit more to share some information, just sit down with our liaisons to those boards, find out what's going on there, how much time we spend doing it, the like. So what we did was we first went to figure out exactly what we wanted to share with the board when we did some of that analysis. And just a quick presentation overview for you this morning is we're going to give a quick overview of an 2009 and a 2012 evaluation that was similar in nature in some respects to what we're going to be talking about today. It just shows that we have periodically gone back and reviewed some of our boards to just make some considerations and changed a few things with board direction. We'll look at the current survey evaluation criteria that we used when polling our board. We'll look at the 2021 review of the 31 Board of County Commissioner boards and those survey results from those 31 boards. We'll also review the 31 state and federally created boards and share some of those survey results. We'll go over some of our outside boards. We'll talk about board size and the different sizes of our boards, and then we'll get into some of the staff and BCC board evaluation discussion points and further direction. So the next slide is an overview of the 2021 boards and committees. And as you see here, we have a total of 83 boards and committees. 31 are Board of County Commissioner established. 31 are mandated. Those are also, many of those created by the board, but they are mandated 28 by state statute or state law, and 3 by federal mandate, and those primarily in order to receive federal funds. And then we have 21 outside agencies and organizations that we'll touch on today. So just to give you a little history of some of the past survey results in August of 2009, the staff polled a number of our board members. We did not poll our board members for our overview that we did that we're going to share with you today, but just kind of gives you a little bit of the response. 35% of those responded of the board members polled. Our liaisons, about 82% of those responded. Some of those made comments on possible sunsetting of respective boards, and we've seen some of our boards sunset since that 2009 period. A little bit about what the estimated cost for the advisory boards at that time, $500. 2 hours was the average length of a meeting, and then 75% attendance and quorums of 95% of the time. So on the next slide, we looked at some of the current evaluation criteria that we were going to look at. The importance of the board function, the ability of the mission of the board to be met by a similar board to see if maybe we can merge some of that, the actual size of the board, how often those boards met, the time associated with staffing, the cost associated with the board. We looked at the board diversity. That's a new issue that we've really spent a lot of time tracking and wanted to get a handle on that. And then also some of how the board was established. So just to give you a very, very brief and quick overview of our boards that we currently have. We have 31 BCC established boards. And I'm going to list on the next couple of slides these for you so that you can see them. I don't want to go over all of them, but I do, just for the sake, since we haven't done this presentation for many of you since you've been elected, just wanted to point out a couple of them just to share a few of what some of the boards did. So the first one I wanted to just point out was our Citizens Committee on Airport Noise, which I characterize as Airports Noise Committee. We've got 11 members that serve on that board. 7 of those are appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and then the rest are from different organizations and communities. But this board serves a very important function as it is an outlet for the public to provide input on noise issues at PBIA and offer possible methods of mitigation. That's a board that we get a great amount of public participation from, and is one that we can work on with some of our residents and neighbors directly. Another board I just wanted to point out that you might not be familiar with, our Contract Review Committee. That's a board that has 4 members, 1 that is appointed by the BCC and 3 staff. This board meets every week, and they're in charge with reviewing contracts of the Board of County Commissioners, but specifically issues like change orders or work orders that come after the board has prepared those contracts. They don't have the authority to change those contracts, but they do review those change orders. They meet almost weekly and spend an intensive amount of time doing that. Erwin Jacobowitz does a great job in working with that group. On the next board I just wanted to briefly touch on was our Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board. That's a board where we have 20 members that serve, 7 commissioner appointments, and then some various members. And this board specifically meets to advise and make recommendations to the board related to emergency medical services. So most notably, this board provides recommendations to the BCC on COPCN-related care and transport. On the next slide, on slide 8, our Historic Resources Review Board. That's a 9-member board where we've got 6 prescribed and 3 Palm Beach County residents, and they advise the board regarding Board of County Commissioners regarding historic resources throughout the county, but primarily in the unincorporated area. It actually helps with when we're looking to put things on the state or historic, a federal register of historic places. One good example where this board might be used upcoming is on Peanut Island, as our teams look into some of the restoration there with the Kennedy Bunker. And then finally, just wanted to share with you the Water Utility Advisory Board, 11 members that serve, 7 appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and they review all items at the Water Utility Department, specifically regarding rates and existing rates structures and rate changes. I just wanted to put this out as an example of a board that often brings recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, like many of our other boards do, to provide some opportunities for you to hear from a respective body that's heard input on particular items coming before you. So just to get into the survey results of those 31 specific boards, we polled those boards, and 100% of them responded either by written or we had communications with them directly. 100% of those that responded said their board served an important function and should continue to meet. 1 of the 31 responded their board could be reviewed to potentially merge with another board. 27 of the 31 felt their board was just right in size. 3 felt they were a little too big. 1 felt it was too small. And 1/2 had participation levels between 90 and 100%, and the others, only 2 had trouble meeting quorum. I'm going to go into a little more detail later on in this presentation about some of those specific boards that I referenced here. I just didn't want to duplicate it. So just so you're aware, we'll breach on those particular ones in some coming slides. Also, on cost estimates and board diversity, just our liaisons, we asked about how much they spent preparing for those meetings. So that one individual, that was about 2.5 hours a month coordinating those boards. Now, what you all should know is that for many boards, sometimes there's 2, 8, 10, 12, 15 staff that are engaged in processing the work, that are actually at those meetings. And they vary from a number of our county attorneys, depending on the technical nature of it, to a number of the agencies that fall under Patrick Rudder with PZ&B, and a lot of the technical expertise and some of the reviews that you all receive on a weekly and monthly basis. I share that with you because as I look at the reported cost that we did, this is just raw data from the survey of $60,000. And I just wanted to say that is a way, way low estimate of what the real number is in terms of what these boards cost. Now, I just say that too, in that when we talk of costs, there aren't many staff that we have that we've hired just to service boards. Really, there's only one department that really the main part of their function is servicing a board, and that's the Criminal Justice Commission. But a lot of those staff that we have, they're there, they're in place, and the service to these boards has just become a function of their work over time. And then I also wanted to point out some of the board diversity. In these particular boards, 7 of them reported more diversity over the past 8 years, 18 reported about the same, and 2 reported a little less diversity. So clearly over the last 8 years we've made some steps, but this shows that we've got a little bit more work to do, and I know that you and Cindy and our whole administrative team is constantly striving to look at our boards for diversity. The next slide, wanted to just briefly talk about the 31 non-discretionary boards that were created by state and federal law. And I put an S and an F next to them just to give you a quick reference as to which ones were through the state and which ones were through the federal. Again, I don't want to go through all of these, but I did want to just highlight a couple just to share with you some of the functions you might not be familiar with. One being the Health Facilities Authority. That's a 5-member at-large board, and that is primarily appointed to look at not-for-profit health facilities in the acquisition, construction, financing, and refinancing of projects. Oftentimes, you might see some of those recommendations come to this board where this organization helps to issue tax-exempt and other obligations to finance projects for different not-for-profits. That board has no taxing authority, though, however. And then the next one I wanted to share with you was the HIV Comprehensive AIDS Council CARE of Palm Beach County, a 27-member board, and this council carries out the federal Ryan White Act and some of the federal dollars that we receive, and they set priorities, the allocations of those funds, and develop the plan for the delivery of those health services regarding those individuals getting those services with HIV. When we move on to the slide 13, you'll see a continuation of our survey with the survey results specific to those 31 particular boards. We broke them down to make it a little bit easier to go over. Of those 31 boards that were created by state and federal law, about 68% of those responded. 100% of those responding reported that their board served an important function and should continue to meet. 2 of those 31 responded their board could be reviewed to merge with other boards. 3 respondents felt their board was too big, while the remainder felt it was just right. And 14 of the 21 responding indicated that members' participation was between 80% and 100%. And 2 indicated participation of less than 50%. Those were the Community Action Advisory Board and the Palm Beach County HIV Council. We'll talk a little bit more about those as well in some subsequent slides. On the cost estimates and board diversity of these 31 non-discretionary boards, our liaisons that were spending time there were about 2.25 hours a month coordinating those boards. And again, similar to our other 31, the type of staff and the number of staff that engaged and participated varied by the type of board, but there was significant involvement by staff. The cost to operate these boards varied widely from the ones that reported either from negligible cost to upwards of $30,000 a year, particularly for some of our like planning boards, zoning boards, where we have intense staff review, and probably even there, that might be low for the involvement that they have. The total overall number of reporting of only 9 of those boards reported some cost data to us, which was about $120,000. So you can see that the cost that we spend in staff time, salary, some of the materials, some of the postage and the like, gets into oftentimes the millions of dollars in time and effort that we put towards working on those boards. And then on board diversity, for this group, 11 reported more diversity over the past 8 years, 2 reported about the same, and 2 reported less. So a lot of our boards that are required by state and federal law have shown a lot of improvement in diversity, and that's really just a testament to this board and also to our administrator imparting upon us the importance of looking for diversity when we continue to fill those boards. On slide 15, just wanted to share with you some of the state statute and law. Of those 31 in total, we have 9 that are created by statute or Florida laws where a commissioner serves on those boards. And you see the Children's Services Council, Investment Policy Council, Palomar, Public Safety Coordinating, RTA, TDC, TPA, RPC, and VAB. Excuse me for my use of acronyms in that list, but just for brevity went through it. And then just wanted to point out on the Palomar Water Control District, law allows either a commissioner or landowner within the district to serve, and we currently have a commissioner that serves in that capacity. On the next slide, just wanted to share with you the 3 federal boards that we have, and those are the Commission on Affordable Housing, Community Action Advisory Council, and the Palm Beach County HIV Care Council, all very extremely important boards, and all are there based on federal requirements in order to receive some of the grant funding and allocations that come down to meet some of the services that they and functions that they provide. As we look at the 21 outside boards and committees and staff, as a staff, we didn't spend as much time looking at these, but nonetheless, it was important to point a number of these out for you, and just wanted to share with you just a few of these boards for yours and the public's sake. One, the Biosciences Land Protection Advisory Board. This is a board of 7 members, 1 from the Board of County Commissioners, 1 appointed by the governor, 1 from Palm Beach Gardens, Riviera Beach, Jupiter, Lake Park, and Mangonia Park. And this board was set up to make recommendations on comp plan, land use maps, and zoning and land development regulations related to biotech research uses within municipal overlays. This was a post-Scripps board that came about to sort of keep our eye on Scripps and bioscience in those corridors in the northern part of Palm Beach County. Discover the Palm Beaches, one I know that some of you are familiar with, but nonetheless 22 members of that particular board, 7 appointed by the BCC, and the purpose there is to increase the visitation and to contribute to Palm Beach County's overall economic development. Also, the Palm Beach County Broadband Partnership, that consists of 6 members, 1 from the Board of County Commissioners, and then from the School Board, FAU, Water Management District Education Commission, and Palm Beach State College. This was created by Interlocal in 2006, and this was intended to leverage some of the technology for the group and community to create some digital inclusion programs and allow internet access from computers in homes. Originally, this was very helpful in Pleasant City and then in Delray Beach, and more recently played an integral role with some of our CARES funding and directing some of the broadband dollars and use in that area. So work well done on that particular partnership. Some of the outside boards and committees that require commissioners to serve, you see here, Bioscience Land Protection Advisory Board, Business Development Board, Career Source, County Coalition for Lake Okeechobee, Florida Association of Counties, Intergovernmental Coastal Oceans Task Force, the Multi-Jurisdictional Issues Coordination Forum, and the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council Economic Strategies Committee. In addition, we have other outside boards that commissioners serve, not necessarily requiring a board member. There's not an agreement in place, but have commissioners that serve in that capacity. And the 5 listed here, the Cultural Council, Education Commission, Broadband, the Kravis Center Board of Directors, and the South Florida Fair Board of Directors as well. This slide I wanted to put in there because I'm sure some of you are saying, well, I think I know of maybe one other board that either I serve on or somebody else serves on that I think is a county board or it's related. And there are some other boards, task forces, and initiatives that aren't captured in this 83. They have different processes for how individual members are appointed to those. And I just wanted to share just a couple of examples of some of those boards, task forces, and initiatives. So you're aware, the Reentry Task Force, that was originally created out of the Criminal Justice Commission and now falls under Public Safety. That's internal to county operations. More of an informal membership, the Lake Worth Lagoon Initiative, which serves to put together our plan for the lagoon as well as recommend funding to receive from the legislature. And then also the Sober Homes Task Force, where we have a commissioner that serves and is a board that's from another different outside entities. So I just wanted to bring that, and that's not limited to these. These are just a couple of examples, and I know that there's a number of other ones that exist. The next slide, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about the resolution that governs the establishment of the uniform policies and procedures of the BCC. The original one was developed and adopted in 1995. It has been subsequently amended, most recently in 2015. 2013 was the most recent amendment to that. One of the provisions that was in the original 1995 adopted resolution was a preferred number of members on a board. And for some reason, we found a sweet spot was somewhere between 9 and 11. In some of the backup, you see I've listed how the membership of those boards are, and they vary, from as low as 5 to as high as in the low 30s that you'll see. But typically, we try to keep those between 9 and 11. Currently, we've got 8 BCC established boards that exceed the preferred limit, although in the resolution it does provide when you do break that preferred limit, oftentimes it's because there are specified qualifications for each one of those individual appointees to serve in that particular capacity. But just for viewing's sake, on the next slide, we've put in there a couple of those boards that are over that limit and have prescribed individuals on them. So you see the Advisory Commission on Women, CJC, EMS, the Equal Business Opportunity Advisory Board, Homeless Advisory Board, our Infrastructure Surtax Citizen Oversight Committee, our Palm Trans Service Board, and our Water Resources Task Force. So I'm not indicating on these particular boards that there's any issue with size at all, just that those are the ones that exist that are over those preferred limits of 11. So just to get into some of the discussion points on slide number 23, these were kind of the 3 items that we tended to look at during this particular review and survey for discussion amongst the board. One was the review of the elimination of any advisory boards or committees to see if there was anything that warranted that. 2 was the review of sizes of boards that were over 7 members that had at-large appointments that might be looked at for further reduction. And then finally, review of the overall reduction or expansion of boards and committees. So I'll break that down in each of the subsequent slides. The next slide, we talk about elimination of advisory boards. So through the research that we've done, nothing was indicated by staff. There was no evidence or significant reason to support the elimination of any particular board. But when we talked about the possibility of merging boards maybe with others, one was discussed during some of that review. And that was the Farm Worker Program Advisory Board. So this particular board, just so you know, serves to provide education and job training to seasonal and migrant farm workers and to advise, assist, support, and advocate on matters that strengthen employment opportunities for clients served by the program. It's a 9-member board that's at large right now, and staff was looking at potentially some other boards that might be available to do it. There are some complications with this just in terms of some of the funding sources and the federal grant sources that come in with these that make it pretty difficult, but just wanted to share that that was one there. I think also this particular board too comes from Community Services, and Community Services is one of our departments that actually has 6 boards that particular department oversees. And I know that that's a lot of work for that team. James Green and his team in Taruna work very hard on making sure that those are all meaningful boards and do meaningful work, and they do. But sometimes they look for ways where they might be able to see if they can merge that. One of the possible boards that was discussed for merger of this was the Community Action Advisory Board. And the CAB is a board of 15 members, 5 elected officials, 5 from business and industry, and 5 low income that represent some of those areas that they specifically look at on this particular committee to serve. And this board is to administer programs of the Department of Economic Opportunity and other agencies to work with underprivileged individuals in the public and private sectors to identify and eliminate causes of poverty in the community. So that was just one for a discussion point that we had in some of the review. On the next slide, we looked at review of sizes of boards over 7 members. with at-large appointments for further reduction. And so one board that was mentioned in our review was the Aviation and Airports Advisory Board. Now, with this, I don't think anybody was suggesting that we look to eliminate, any members that are serving or any members that currently wish to serve. But one thing we might do with this is when the terms expire of individuals that no longer would like to serve in those particular capacities as at-large, that maybe this would be one we look at to just reduce it to 7 to single member appointed by the county commissioners, and the other 2 at-large may be sunset. Right now, those 2 at-large appointments were just made, and those individuals are in their last term of that particular committee. On the next evaluation piece, we looked at some of the review of the overall reduction or expansion of boards and committees. And I alluded to these early in the survey, and we'll get into it a little more detail here. So one BCC created board that was reviewed as possibly too small was the Environmental Appeals Board. That's a board that currently has 5 members, and those people that serve on there are prescribed with different expertise and qualifications. One of the reasons that staff thought we might look to expand this if possible is that oftentimes that it's hard to make quorum, and so possibly by expanding that it might be easier to make quorum. Just so you know, this particular board serves in the capacity of looking to hear appeals by the Palm Beach County Public Health Unit or the Environmental Control Officer under the rules of the ULDC. So for example, if somebody is wanting to do setback requirement changes for an underground septic tank, or if under our rules, under ULDC in Article 15, where we'd like people when they are in have an opportunity to connect with sewer or other water sources, that they do that. This is the board that those individuals might go to appeal that section of the ULDC. So a very important function, but one that we've talked with staff about if there was a possibility to expand that might be one that we would look at in the future. One also BCC created board was the Historic Resources Board. That currently has 9 members on that board, and it could be reviewed for reduction in membership. 6 of those require specialized certification. The other 3 only require Palm Beach County residency. And that obviously is a board, as we talked about before, that looks at some of our historic preservation in the county. They don't meet that often. I think it's met maybe about 5 times in the last 3 years. And really it's just a function of items that come before them for historic preservation. On slide 27, just wanted to continue on the review of the expansion and reduction of boards and committees. So 2 boards that are required boards of the county that department respondents indicated might be too large were the Land Development Regulation Advisory Board that has 19 members, and the Planning Commission that has 16 members. The Planning Commission, as you might know, 2 members are appointed from each of the board members that serve on the Board of County Commissioners, and then 2 at large. Part of this is that maybe during the pandemic we might have seen some difficulty in membership presence, and it's possible that might change, but I think at this time we'll continue to monitor that. One thing that we did see with the pandemic is it certainly brought a little bit of difficulty on a number of different boards and gatherings to get some people together, and so over the next year or 2, as maybe we have more ability to meet, we'll take a look at that and compare how some of that attendance is in the future. And then finally, the other board that maybe the board suggested, we suggest is too large, is the Palm Beach County HIV Care Council. This is a federally required board. It has experienced some low attendance. We have done some changes to this over the last few years in reducing the size of the board and also prescribing some different roles to some of those individual seats that are on that particular board. But again, just a couple of discussion points that some of our staff raised that we can continue to monitor over the coming months and year. And then finally, I just wanted to put this last slide up just to share with you some of the benefits of county boards. Because, we talked a little bit about the cost and how much staff time, and obviously we think that there's a lot of incredible work that our boards do in our county. We're a large county of 1.5 million, so clearly these boards create an opportunity for people to civically engage and to serve. And I know that a lot of us here have pushed that idea in a lot of different venues of getting folks involved. Two, it allows for some important public comment on pending items before coming to the Board of County Commissioners. Obviously, some of your planning and zoning commissions, we talked about the Airport Noise Committee as well. So they serve a vital function as an opportunity for the public to be able to exercise their right to comment, and we create additional opportunities for them to do that. Some of our boards have some decision-making authority to streamline county actions. One that I talked about was our contracts board to help streamline some of those work orders and put some extra eyes on those to make sure that everything is good there. It also, these boards, they engage high-level experts who serve on those boards, and it continues to fortify that public-private engagement that we strive for, and it keeps that relationship there between county government and the public sector and understanding where each other is coming from. And then also it provides an opportunity for formal bodies to make recommendations directly to the board. As we talked about, oftentimes the Palm Trans Service Board, the Water Utilities Advisory Board, and other zoning commissions, planning commissions all come to this board with recommendations on very important issues. And I know that many of you rely on and take those recommendations into high consideration when deliberating as the Board of County Commissioners. So, Mayor, those are some of the findings from some of the surveys that we've done and some of the additional work that staff has in reviewing some of our boards. And we're happy to answer any questions, engage in discussion, and seek any additional direction from the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Todd. We'll go now to Commissioner Weiss and Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, Todd. And I want to first say I really want to thank all the individuals who serve on these boards. I personally served on the Citizens Committee on Airport Noise for probably a decade or so, and I know the role of the members play and how important it is to have people that are willing to get involved, get engaged, and be able to create another venue for citizen engagement in Palm Beach County. So I also had the opportunity to serve on a number of boards with the City of West Palm Beach as well. And I welcome getting the input. And board members, a number of my board appointees will contact me directly and let me know about an issue or an item that they may have concern with or support for, and I very much value their insights. As you know, I know people. I'll speak for myself. I'm not an expert on most of the things that come in front of this board, and have to rely on the expertise of those around me. And as somebody who worked in private industry, always was trained to find the best, brightest people to surround myself with in making decisions. So I really appreciate the insights. I think that there may be some opportunities, as you've identified, for maybe a little bit of streamlining, but overall, I just want to say thank you again to the members that serve and their willingness and staff working with them. But I think in general, I'm very positive about the service by our advisory and other boards.
Thank you, Commissioner Weiss, Commissioner Marino, then we'll go to Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you. Well done, Todd. Thank you. I much appreciate it because I think it was me who asked you to delve into this. And being a newly elected commissioner, I've taken my time in putting people on these boards because I do appreciate the importance of them, and actually still have 2 placements left that I haven't done. But I do know that each commissioner has some boards that are very specific to the areas. As you indicated earlier, Palmar, which is in my district, so I serve as a member on the Palmar board. The North Lake Boulevard Task Force is another one that even though it wasn't in your presentation, we know it's there, and I believe that it is set to sunset at the end of this month. And I know I've spoken with staff and some of the members of the task force, and the members believe that this committee has done all the work that it's going to do, and I think we should move to let it sunset at the end of this month. And I believe there might be a financial component attached to this, so let's see what we can do with that to get the monies distributed to, I think, the different members. The Bioscience Land Advisory Board, with the advent of the partnership of UF and Scripps, I'd like to ask staff to explore the possibility of expanding the related activities to include maybe more health and technology. And then maybe let's convene a meeting of the committee to get their input on this. And another committee, Seacoast. I know it's not a committee that's on your list, but I know we have a representative there by the name of, this may sound familiar, Bob Wiseman. And I know Bob is doing a great job, and just wanted to put that back on the radar. Also, Water Resources Board. The qualifications for the Water Resources Board don't really qualify anybody in District 1 to be on the board. So I'd like to see if we could possibly expand the qualification to include a user, which would, in District 1, would actually be somebody in a business who is using it. Because we have no residents that get water in District 1 from water utilities. And also, I might suggest adding a board. I know we just talked about this, but our budget is getting awfully large, to the tune of close to $6 million. So I know we've had a budget oversight committee in the past, and I'd like to maybe see that we bring that back. And those are all my comments. Thank you for your work. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor, if I can just respond just very briefly, and thank you for those comments, Commissioner Marino. Yes, I can tell you that staff is working with some of the other municipalities on the North Lake Boulevard Task Force through that sunset, and we've been getting some of that input, so direction understood. Also, as we're looking at things like the University of Florida and their involvement with Scripps, that we'll look to see if we can expand the reach of that particular task force. And then also on the Water Utilities Advisory Board, we've been working already with staff on your suggestion to make sure that there is somebody that is representative and you have a fair appointment to that particular board. So that's already under works. So thank you for those comments.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Marino. Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you, Mayor. And Todd and Cindy, thank you so much for coming around and going to great length to describe all these different, especially for someone who's new on the committee. I have a comment. There is a notation that $60,000 is paid for, that's sort of our cost for operating many of these boards. And I think that's well spent. And I think that it's amazing that all these boards are operating and it's only $60,000. I don't want to give anybody an opportunity to up it, but I think that it's an excellent, excellent investment. There's no better investment we can make as a public commission than to bring the public into governing. And these boards are really windows to our public for them to participate in what our decisions are. I have a question with regard to the 31 non-discretionary boards created by state or federal law. And I'm going to ask you, Todd, because you're familiar with this, the Treasure Coast and those others that we know about in the legislature. Those are funded, aren't they, by the state legislature as they operate? And is there an issue, has there been an issue about continuing those funding of some of those local boards, such as the Treasure Coast?
Well, I can tell you that some of them are funded, and for example, when there's grant funding that comes in to pass through, yes, that's the case, but there are others that are funded in different capacities. So for example, Children's Services Council, Healthcare District, those are funded based on ad valorem ability for those respective boards to levy millage. Other boards, like the TPA, for example, they're funded through some dollars that come in from federal funds as well, where they receive some of those dollars, but not all of them are funded by the state. I mean, the Value Adjustment Board is a good example of one where, for years, as part of our legislative agenda, we tried to go back to Tallahassee and ask for the ability to raise the fees a little higher to reflect actual costs of operating that particular board. So it's a mixed bag of boards that are funded and ones that are underfunded or that just our responsibility to do it.
Good. And one last comment. I think that it's impressive that when you were going through the survey of asking board members and those on these committees, 100% of those responded reported that they served an important function.
Yeah.
Now, whether we have too many in one or not enough in another, the bottom line is that everybody feels, from the public, that they are really promoting an important function. So I think that that's a win-win. They're doing exactly what we would want them to do, which is to be a window to the public. And they feel, 100% of them, that they're doing an important function. So I'm very pleased with how this has been run and operated. I'm sure that there are boards that I haven't put anybody on, and I'll look into that. Thank you so much for the work you've done on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Sacks. Commissioner McKinley.
Thank you. In other words, Todd, are some of those boards unfunded mandates?
Yeah, probably, some of them would qualify as unfunded mandates in there, and underfunded mandates too.
Yeah. Tallahassee at work for you. A question for you. The Water Resources Task Force with 28 members, I know that Commissioner Weiss and I have attended those meetings. Is that the actual appointee plus the alternate, or is that just 28 appointees?
14. Yeah, it's 14 members and 14 alternates that serve on that particular board.
Okay.
So it's 14 and 14.
I thought that sounded a little high. I don't
Yeah.
remember the table being that big in those meetings.
14 and 14.
And just a couple of comments. The 16 County Coalition on the Responsible Management of Lake Okeechobee, I believe, was required under state statute. So just didn't want people to think that that one was just created for the fun of it. I believe it was included in a piece of legislation that required its establishment. The Agricultural Enhancement Committee, the notes in here say that they last met in March. They met on September 1st, according to their chair, and will be meeting again in November. They're struggling a little bit because their staff liaison resigned and his position has not been filled yet. So God bless Ron Rice and everything he's trying to juggle right now, and I hope that we get that position filled for him soon. And then the last, of course, would be the Farm Worker Program Advisory Board, and I would not recommend that it be merged with the Community Action Advisory Board. I would actually look to consider expanding their area of responsibility to, we've got a lot of problems I think that have been highlighted in the last few years related to farm worker housing. And when I look at these other boards related to affordable housing and the Homeless Advisory Board, there's very little recognition that we also receive housing funds from USDA. There's a large focus on our federal partnership with Housing and Urban Development, but farm worker housing is so specialized. And I think what we learned with the Okeechobee Center in particular was the disgraceful condition of some of those housing units. And there's nothing more viable or more important for economic prosperity in our farm worker community than making sure that at the very beginning they have a safe place to live. And I applaud the new partner we brought into the Belgrade Housing Authority to manage the Okeechobee Center. But what we also learned is that when the pandemic hit, the staffing at the Department of Health that is responsible for maintaining those units or inspecting those units, their resources were shifted towards pandemic response, and we have not yet completed any of the inspections in the Osceola Center or any other farm worker housing unit in the Glades, or anywhere else in the county where there's farm worker housing. I know Commissioner Sacks has some in her district as well. And so I I would recommend, rather than trying to either sunset or merge their program into another, that we really look at the mission of that board and consider adding to its mission and making sure that the right appointees are on that board. And then I'd also, in the same breath, I'm looking at the Homeless Advisory Board, and the last required member is a representative from the community where the next Homeless Resource Center is planned. And I know that that was added in response to the second Homeless Resource Center going in Mayor Kerner's district. But since this time, or that time, we've also added the third Homeless Resource Center in the Glades community. And so we may need to look at the makeup of the Homeless Advisory Board to make sure that that Homeless Resource Center is also represented on that board. And those are my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. I don't have any comment cards by members of the public, and I don't see any other further comments by, oh, my apologies, Commissioner Bernard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just have a couple comments that I'd like to bring up. First of all, I want to thank staff, Todd and the whole crew for presenting this item to us because it's a lot of information in regards to the so many different boards that we serve and that the public also get the chance to participate. At the end of the day, just want to really thank the citizens who are on all of these boards, who pretty much allow us as a county to move forward. And so much thanks to all of the members of our residents who serve on all of these boards to help us assist our public function. And Commissioner McKinley had mentioned the Homeless Advisory Board. I serve as the chair of the Homeless Advisory Board, and I do agree that we should add a member that, since we do have the Homeless Resource Center out west, and so we can also add that person to the Homeless Advisory Board. Yes, we have a lot of boards, and there may be some opportunities to merge some boards or to expand functions. So I think that that's something that I'd like for us to continue to explore and see how we can make these boards more efficient. And lastly, Commissioner Marino had mentioned potentially doing a budget oversight board. I know last week we had our second budget hearing, and I had the chance to really, go through the budget and with OFMB and with the work of Sherry Brown and Lisa Masters and Robin Morris, our whole team. I'd like to get a little bit more information in regards to potentially doing a budget oversight because the budget is a very complicated process. And so I'd like to get more information and to have a robust discussion regarding whether or not we should go creating a budget oversight. And I'd like to get more information as to why did it sunset, or what was the rationale getting rid of it? Because I know the budget is very complicated, and so I'd like to know more. And Ms. Baker, I don't know if you want to weigh in or any staff member, but I just don't know if we want to add another a complicated group to in a budget that's really complicated.
Mayor, may I
Please.
respond?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, during my career here with the county, we've had two major budget oversight committees, and each committee spanned it over a number of years. At the end of the day, the committees recommended that they be disbanded because there was no more work for them to do. And since the last one actually recommended they be disbanded, we have been tight on budget. And so we have not necessarily needed it, We've only added programs the board directed be added. Our budgets have grown. The large portion of the general fund ad valorem budget has been the sheriff's budget. And so that's not been an area that, the prior committees have actually gone into. So we're happy to look at it, give it more review, and then bring it back to the board for further direction. It is very time consuming, I can tell you, and a number of the committee members in the past, when they voted to disband the board, it was because they felt there was no more work to be done on the budget.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. Commissioner Bernardi, do you have some further comments?
Yeah, so, Mr. Mayor, if we can, what I'd love for, working with Commissioner Marino is to kind of like get a little bit, if we can have staff to come back and provide more information to the board. And so in that way, we can at least flush it out and make a decision on, on whether or not we should add it, that as a committee.
Madam Administrator,
Bring it back to the board.
Very good. Thank you.
Bring it back to the board.
We look forward to that occurring. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Any further comments?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. We'll move now to Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I actually had two more comments I forgot to mention. I'm excited about the enthusiastic participation from the members of the Commission on Women, but I have heard some frustration that there are things that they want to do, and the staff seems a little less enthusiastic about trying to want to make some of that work. And I think it's up to the board of whether or not we want to spend resources on some of the recommendations that may be coming from our advisory boards, and not, I don't think staff should cut off that conversation without giving us an opportunity to hear what some of these advisory boards are asking for. And so if that message could get back, that would be good. And then Commissioner Marino, I worked in the budget office in Sarasota County, and there were very creative ways in which the county presented the budget to the public. And I think we should look at some best practices from different counties around the country about how they get the public a little bit more engaged in the budget process. And that might help rather than creating another board. I think there are different options to look at. And we're also going to see the Infrastructure Sales Tax Oversight Committee sunset just by the fact that our sales tax is going to sunset. And so that would create an opening for another advisory board if that came through. But Todd, at the Agricultural Enhancement Committee and the Farm Worker Program Advisory Board, when you look at the description of what the Enhancement Council, our committee, is doing, it's pretty neat. I'd love to hear an update from both of those boards on if they have any recommendations, particularly when you're talking about marketing local grown produce and all of the other industries, the nursery industry, the equestrian industry, anything that's ag-related in our county. I'd love to hear an update from them at some point. Thank you.
We can arrange for that, no problem.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. Commissioner Sacks.
Not to give you more work, but Cindy and Todd, but I think that what Commissioner McKinley said was really on point. If we could get, this could be done, not necessarily verbally during a commission meeting, but if they could give us little updates on what they're doing, especially issues such as Commissioner McKinley talked about the equestrian community, the farm workers, any areas that we wouldn't necessarily be that much up to date on. I think one of the functions of these committees is to have the public speak up and advocate and give it to us. So possibly, if there is a way that we could get their updates, it would really be part of the whole function of having these. I mean, I don't know what have they done on certain areas, what's going on with regard to some of these issues. And I think that would, if we can find a way to, and I'm sure we can, to get it to all of us. I think that way we can keep abreast of what's going on in the committees, and that way we keep abreast of what's going on in all 7 districts, and it would be a tremendous, tremendous help. Thanks so much. Just a suggestion.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Sacks. Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. Yes, I know we all get an update from the library, and it includes the minutes from their advisory board meetings, which are very enlightening and also then spark other reading for me to do. So when we do get feedback from our committees, and a lot of us get individual feedback from our members. I know I do from members of the zoning and planning and the land advisory board. So I think any follow-up that we could get from the committees would be beneficial for us because it helps us make decisions going forward. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. I know one of the things I have my staff do is look at the minutes of these various of the committees and boards that I'm interested in, review their meeting minutes for me, and then make me aware of what's going on. So just want to throw that out there. I know not everybody knows that those minutes are published and available online, and so you can see what transpires in their meetings.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Weiss. And just a quick question. I think every quarter the board members get an updated list of members that serve on these boards. Is that correct?
Quarterly to them on the updates on the numbers.
A lot of the commission staff and I work together, and they have access to the database to be able to review any vacancies for that.
Okay.
Mr. Bernhardt has me give him reports annually so that your office has them,
Okay.
Along with the liaisons being very involved with the commission staff to work with them on getting district vacancies filled. And then prior to any agenda item, the liaisons will send out something to all the commission staff requesting support for the nominees that will either be reappointed or have been given to that committee for appointment, and ask your staff if they have, or if you have another individual that you would like to be considered for appointment to that board.
All right, very good. And from your perspective, you don't see any issue or inefficiency in the how quickly we fill vacancies from a board perspective? Are we typically doing that not from your department, but us making those appointments or nominations?
Yes, a lot of times the liaisons will work directly with your office. A lot of the times your department, the liaisons will work directly with your offices on district appointments. Sometimes it goes through me so that I can help with reminding staff, but I don't know about all of them.
Okay.
Mayor, I will add one thing, and that is, I know that we do have some boards where we've had vacancies, and we do have some long-standing vacancies in some of them. And oftentimes it can be difficult to get some people in those, particularly when you've got very narrow qualifications, sometimes that are prescribed to something. So on the staff side of that, we can work a little bit closer with you to try to, push some of those recommendations along to you as well, because I know that you and your staff are often, working on that, but we can step up a little bit more to see if there's more we can do to help you fill some of those as well.
Sure, yeah, I just don't want a delay on our behalf to hold up the process, so don't ever feel like you can't push or prod and poke us, or at least me anyways. All right, very good. Any further comments or questions by members of the board? Otherwise, we'll proceed to our 10:30 PACE workshop. So thank you very much for the presentation today.
Thank you.
And we'll take just a 5-minute recess if that's all right. And then we'll reconvene promptly at about 10:45. Call the Board of County Commissioners Workshop hearing back to order. There has been a request to postpone this workshop. No, I'm just kidding. Just want to make sure everyone's paying attention. Little levity never hurts. Thank you. All right, so we are back to order for our 10:30 agenda item 4B, Property Assessed Clean Energy Program update. We're delighted to have very robust amount of public participation here, but just a reminder, if you haven't submitted a card and you'd like to make comments, please do so. And I'll turn it over to our professional staff, and we're delighted to have our tax collector, Ann Gannon, here with us as well. So, Mr. Rudder, you're recognized.
Mayor, Commissioners, good morning. We're here on your PACE item. Yes, as you previously alluded to, it was postponed from the previous month. This is basically a continuation of the discussion we've had following board direction over the past couple years, and we kind of go back to 2019 for our new commissioners who weren't around following this discussion. In 19, board indicated some concerns with the program in general. We scheduled a workshop in October of 2019. That was postponed following board direction related to allowing opportunity for legislation to potentially take place in that session. None occurred, came back in 20, so the PACE bill did not occur. In June of 20, we came back and met with the board, worked with industry, have been working with tax collector and collaborating on sharing of information. And as we move into 21, we kind of hung back again following board direction to see if anything happened in the last legislative session. Did not occur again. So we are back to discuss with the board, seek any direction you have on potentially modifying our ordinance related to PACE that we have in Palm Beach County. So if just a brief rundown of the way we sought to structure this to hopefully get as much information to the board in as consolidated a form as possible. Staff, Megan, will give you a presentation from the county staff perspective. As you mentioned, tax collectors here, opportunity for her to make her presentation. And then also for industry, they will have an opportunity, if in board's pleasure, to do something of a consolidated presentation. I think you have copies of all three of these in front of you at your seats. So board direction previously, we're looking at ordinance changes addressing the consumer protection and then the program streamlining, eligible qualified improvements, and then discussing an administrative fee. So through the course of the last year, we've had multiple discussions with industry members, touched on a number of these points. I think thoughts are decently well formed at our levels, certainly seeking the board's input and direction on that. And we'll come back to that at the end and seeking your direction. But with that, I will ask Megan to run you through our presentation.
Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. I'm Megan Houston with the Office of Resilience. We're going to speak a little bit about a brief overview of PACE before focusing most of today's workshop on how the PACE program has been working for Palm Beach County. At the most basic sense, PACE is a financing tool that lets both commercial and residential property owners invest in clean energy improvements and pay for these improvements through their property tax bills. Jurisdictions have to pass legislation to allow PACE to operate in their community. Currently, 37 states have done so. 26 states plus DC have active PACE programs at this time, with most of these comprising of commercial PACE programs. Residential PACE is active in only 3 states, Florida, California, and Missouri. And even though it's only active in 3 states, that has been where most of the dollar value for PACE financing has been done. In Florida, Florida passed a statute in 2010 to allow local jurisdictions to create their own PACE programs. 210 and counting municipalities in Florida have done so. And notably, in Florida, PACE can only be used currently to finance 3 things, which are energy conservation and efficiency measures, renewable energy like solar, and wind-resistant measures, including roof improvements. Here in Palm Beach County, The board directed staff to create our PACE ordinance, and the county passed this in 2017. The state and municipalities allow for PACE to happen, but the PACE program is carried out through PACE districts. We have 4 in Florida, and these are the same 4 that operate in Palm Beach County through interlocal agreements. Each of these PACE districts uses a third-party administrator or multiple administrators, which we call providers. Those are the ones who carry out the on-the-ground financing services, perform the due diligence, and approve contractors to carry out the PACE project work. On the slide here on the right side is how we currently have our PACE districts and their providers distributed throughout Palm Beach County. In Palm Beach County, the PACE program applies to the unincorporated areas and within all municipalities that have not passed their own PACE program. Our PACE ordinance also applies to Palm Beach County municipalities that have a program but who have passed a resolution to participate in Palm Beach County's program as well. So this means without our program, cities without a program and certain areas in unincorporated Palm Beach County would not have access to PACE financing. And as you see on this slide, there are 4 who have their own PACE program who do not participate in what we administer. Some facts and figures on the PACE projects are here on the next slide. 2018 and 2019 is combined because 2018 was kind of a half year as PACE projects were getting going. About $86 million financed then, about 4,000 projects were completed. And the complaints we get, these are all self-reported data here, and the PACE providers reported about 80 complaints, so that's about 2%. Moving to 2020, $60 million of projects financed, nearly 3,000 projects completed, or I believe that's completed. And then a little bit of an uptake in the complaints that were self-reported here from about 80 with 2018 and 2019 combined to about 200 complaints in 2020. And separately, the Consumer Affairs Division within Palm Beach County receives a handful of cases each year related to PACE. Since the Office of Resilience was staffed in 2018, we have been enforcing the PACE ordinance and making sure that as we perform our quality assurance and quality control over the PACE program, that things are complying. We have worked diligently to develop the systems in place that we have today for streamlining the quarterly reporting. We've created a consumer disclosure notice that we've asked the PACE providers to use. We've developed an auditing system to audit annual projects to also look at compliance in more detail. And we maintain continuous communication with PACE providers and PACE stakeholders in this county. We also collaborate with our local and municipal colleagues to look at PACE best practices and areas of improvement, and we work with our Consumer Affairs and Contractors Certification Division as they also are dealing with PACE deals as well. Some of the challenges related to that we've seen is I think realizing just how much staff time is required to perform and enforce the ordinance and the statutes that are on the books now. The PACE responsibilities that the Office of Resilience has are summarized over on the right. And so this was just a brand new program assigned to a brand new office, and we've built in the reporting and administrative processes, and even still there's significant staff time involved. Related to consumer protection, PACE financing is not just free money. There are financing terms, interest, annual payments, things that add or could add significant cost. So, and the other aspect is that the financing is tied to the property. So there is a risk of foreclosure. To my knowledge, there hasn't been a foreclosure case in Palm Beach County yet directly linked to PACE. But there is that risk. Because of these risks, the board made sure that we had some pretty robust consumer protection provisions in the ordinance when it was adopted, such as requiring separate disclosure of key financial terms, quarterly reports that demonstrate that compliance, and basic program requirements like making sure that owner is current on their property tax bills, and that the project costs are reasonable compared to the fair market value of the property. Even still, we hear that there are still consumer concerns with the door-to-door sales aspect. We've seen advertisements that have been contractor generated that were a little bit misleading. Some people complain about lacking understanding of this complicated financial system. The iPad and the electronic signatures we've seen people raise those issues in the reports that they're providing to our Consumer Affairs Division. So there are things that have emerged, and we're working through trying to assess how big of a deal, how prevalent these issues are. So we'll walk through some of the potential next steps, depending on your direction here now, related to whether we can look at the ordinance, whether we want to see an expansion of PACE qualifying improvements, and whether we might want to think about a fee or continue as is. We're just suggesting the range of ideas today. We don't have anything, concrete yet. We're happy to work with industry and stakeholders here on your direction. We are also evaluating existing research and working with the Office of Inspector General to really take a look at the program and see where we can expedite things and help improve project and program management. So we're happy to, take that constructive feedback and see how we can continue to improve things. Related to streamlining and additional, ways to expedite things, we could, if we wanted to open up the ordinance, we could look at standardizing by ordinance the quarterly reporting and the annual reporting out there. There's some ambiguity in the data that the providers have to provide and when they have to provide it. So we've put in best practices, but we could look to tightening that language up a little bit. We could also require parcel numbers, which is how the county likes to track properties. So that would make it easier to compare properties. And we could assign things like having a single point of contact because there are lots of providers involved, and it's just easier to have the districts each in charge of their own providers. Related to consumer protection examples, again, if we wanted to look at adding consumer protection, we have a range of measures out there. As I mentioned, it's hard to assess how prevalent the consumer issues are because we get limited information about those complaints by ordinance. It's only just a very brief, I think it's even just a number of complaints that are received. So nevertheless, we could add additional requirements to be more proactive and responsive to potential consumer protection concerns, such as maybe in addition to the iPad, having a hard copy leave behind so people know who to contact if they have questions, looking at who is making that PACE overview, adding additional financial information on the disclosure, things with contractors we could look at, and looking at having additional fair market value limits for the property. So, and this list here is by no means exhaustive or representing everything that we could look at. So while we're here, every year it tends to come up on our Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact legislative group, whether we want to support as a group or not the expansion of PACE qualifying improvements. We have not heard, or we've heard that this might not be a state issue this year about whether somebody will introduce a bill to expand PACE qualifying improvements, but in the past, people are asking to expand the definition so that seawalls and septic to sewer conversions could be included in this type of financing. We, staff has not asked the board formally for your position on this, so we've not supported or opposed, but that's something that while we're here, it could be helpful to get your input there. And then finally, we would like to just get your direction on the administrative fee aspect. when PACE was created, I don't think staff knew just how much of a full-time employee this would require as performing the QA and the QC. It is, we are spending significant time on dealing with PACE. We could charge a nominal staff fee that could help support this work so that those residents and businesses who are using PACE are funding that position rather than everyone funding the position, whether or not they are using PACE. And there are multiple ways that we could look at it based off of a per project fee or a per district provider fee as the districts and providers are adding new businesses who are authorized to work in this jurisdiction. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Patrick and talk about next steps.
And Megan already hit on them in greater detail, but just to be brief and to consolidate that home, board direction we're seeking is, one option, certainly leave the ordinance as is, no changes. Another option, obviously, continue to work with industry. We've touched base on a lot of these points. Send us with that direction to continue to work with industry, come back to you at a point in the near future after we've really honed in on these and provide you with the feedback and where we are and our recommendations for potential modifications to an ordinance, presuming there might be direction to hit on as many consumer protection type provisions available and look to enhance those if so. And then last is the administrative fee aspect as well. I think Megan touched on it. We're looking for a modest fee, but we're finding that every 6 months, every year that goes on, there's a lot of work involved. And certainly the past couple of years, not just her office, myself, Bob, other attorneys, folks, a lot of time has been involved in working through some of these points and administering our ordinance. So certainly at the conclusion, we're available to answer any questions now, but certainly at the conclusion, we would be asking for the board to direct us on how they want to proceed.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. I think now is an appropriate time to go to our tax collector for your presentation, ma'am.
Good morning, commissioners and Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for the opportunity. As you know, we kind of also administer this program on the other end of putting these on the tax bill. And we've had a number of challenges with this. And we've also had a number of issues raised by the participants and complaints of which we're not able to deal with because we're not the person who should deal with that. And I asked a couple of my staff people to really dive into this program and look at the numbers. And my director who's going to give the presentation, Georgette Wagner, she actually spent 1.5 years looking at this program. So it's not like she didn't dive into just what we see, but went also to the clerk's website to look at the loans and how they were recorded and was the correct information available. And then within our agency, we've actually adapted a plan to deal with some of this and a staff person that we've actually hired who is our PACE coordinator. So I will turn this over to Georgette and she will go through this because she knows all of this. I think she slept with this for the last 1.5 years.
All right, Ms. Wagner, we're delighted to have you here today.
Thank you. As Ms. Gannon said, we looked at this.
Can you just make sure the microphone is working?
Let me see. Okay.
All right, much better, thank you.
We looked at this from the tax side of the house, and as I'm sure you are aware, every September the PACE agencies will submit and certify their assessments to us, and then we include them in the property tax bills each year. So they're paid as an annual payment. So the purpose of our review was to take a look from some of the comments that we've had from people who participate in the PACE program, to take a look at how it's grown, what we collect in taxes, and we also looked at the accuracy of the information across the board by starting with the quarterly reports as submitted by the 4 providers, the taxing authorities, and trying to take a look at what we're provided the information that's given, look at the accuracy of that, and try to give you a picture of what that looks like from the tax side. Right? So I've looked at this from 4 perspectives. We're going to take a look at our history of the taxes itself. We're going to look at the impact to the property owners. Then I'm going to talk about the accuracy of the information that we reviewed, and also closing with what actions we're going to take going forward. So, as Megan mentioned, it started in 2017, and we have tracked the year since it began appearing on the tax rolls. And actually last week we received the certified taxing authority payments that will be due in the 2021 year. So it actually has grown from 79 participants back in 2017 to what next year will be 6,300, almost 6,400 participants in Palm Beach County. That's like an 80-fold increase since its beginning. So it really has grown exponentially. And from 19 to 20, it was a 79% increase. And then it's 37% coming into the upcoming tax year. The only one that tends to be different is that we did hear from a conference call we had with some of the PACE participants that Fred plans to move away from residential funding and mostly into commercial, of which we only have 12 of those right now, 12 commercial projects. And in dollars, what that looks like is we started out at just under half a million dollars, and in the 21 year, it will be 15 million. So it really has, we have seen a lot of participation and a lot of growth in tax dollars. These next few slides are just to give you a visual of where these projects are, and these are by city address and not by taxing authorities for the city, because there's, just like in West Palm Beach, that goes all the way out to the turnpike. So that you can get an idea by providers what they look like. So there are 1,100 in 2020 for Florida Green Finance. That's up 129% from the year prior. For Fred, they started out in 2019 with 103 and went up to 266. That's still up 158%, but just to give you some idea of where they're located. And for Florida PACE, they only went up 1% last year. It's a little bit higher in the 21 year. And they were at 582 in 2020. And the largest growth that we're seeing is in Florida Green Corridor, which in 19 had 1,500 and went up to 2,600. And I believe, if I go back, let's see, for 2021, I did not change all of these documents in that time. So they went from 2,600 to 3,897 in the next tax year. So what that looks like is from city to city, across all of them, we're seeing the growth in the top 4 cities. The city of West Palm Beach is growing the highest, followed by Boca, Boynton, and Lake Worth. And of course, that's going to have a lot to do with the population of those particular cities as well. The newer ones that have started to grow is in the kind of Jupiter to Cuesta area, and we began in 2020 to see more of those than we did in the previous years. So I want to look at the taxpayer increase. Probably the number one inquiry we get every November is, what happened to my tax bill? So we took a look at those years, and on average, it's 42% of their tax bill is what the increase is. Doesn't seem like a lot when you're talking about $200 extra a month, but since it's a one-time payment, $2,400, that seems like a lot of money to the taxpayers, and that's the reason that they contact us, not understanding what has happened to their tax bill. But what this chart will show you is it varies depending on what they're not, because it changes their non-ad valorem assessment. So there are some that are over 80% of their tax bill, but the majority of them sit between the 40 and 60% number. And then if we look at it in terms of dollars, on average, they said it's $2,500 more in their tax bill each year. The highest, of course, is the commercial, as you might imagine. The majority of those are commercial. But they do range from as low as $340 to up to $300,000 in additional tax. So some people are quite surprised, not realizing what their tax bill was going to look like when they got it. As Megan already went over, per the ordinance, there are loan requirements for the property owner, the energy improvements. The assessment may not include 20% of the fair market value. The past 3 years of taxes cannot be delinquent unless they're the new owner. Mortgage debt may not be delinquent and may not exceed 90% of the fair market value. The PACE assessments plus them are granted based upon market values and not on credit rating, making the loans easier to grant. So what you may anticipate in the future is that as our property values are going higher, the amount of money that they can be assessed will increase as well. And as Megan also spoke, sometimes the consumer doesn't understand what the impact to their property is when they add a PACE assessment. And we want them to understand that their assessments are attached to the property and not to the owner. There is no discount for early payment of these assessments, as in with a regular tax bill. Refinancing can be a problem, as well as selling the property. There may not be the ability to pay down the assessment unless your home loan is refinanced. PACE loans are often sold to other financial institutions, similar to mortgages. Escrow payments will double in the first year of the assessment. And I want to spend a minute explaining what that means. For those of us that have a mortgage, each year you're assessed that, and they have to pay that bill in November. When the first year the PACE assessment is added, the mortgage company will come back to you and say, wait, we didn't anticipate that additional $2,500, so you can either make a payment of that $2,500 or we will add that additional $200 to your escrow for the year to catch up. So they are, in that first year, they're going to double that assessment. So the secondary comment that comes from the public is, now my mortgage payment is $200 more, $400 a month for the assessment, which we did not anticipate. So our concern is that the consumer does understand what happens when they add a PACE assessment to their property. The summary of PACE agreements must be filed with the clerk and comptroller as a public record. And the tax deductibility may exceed the $10,000 limit. And in our county, in 2020, 11% of the assessments were higher than that 10,000 limit. And probably more importantly, what the taxpayer doesn't understand is that since these are on the property tax bill, they will be paid, and if they don't pay them by March 31st, the taxes will increase by 3% on April 1st. If the payments are not made, tax certificates will be sold on June 1st of each year. The property tax bill with penalties will increase by at least 13%. If not paid for 3 years, the property is then eligible for a tax deed auction, and we only had one TDA so far, so we only had one go 3 years without. But once it goes, on a tax deed application is applied on, the interest jumps to 18% until it is sold or paid off. Taxes are a first lien and will be paid before other incurred debt if it's sold at a tax deed auction or a foreclosure, meaning that this debt takes the highest priority. And why is that important? It's important because the way the taxes are collected and the structure the property owner bears all the risk if they don't pay the assessment. Because they make the payments once a year with the property tax. So 50% of all the tax bills are paid in November. So the assessments are paid on 50% within the first month of the tax year. 86% of the tax bills are paid by March 31st. 97% of the tax bills are paid before the tax certificate sale. And then, of course, 100% of the tax bills are paid once the certificate sale is completed. And what that really says is that given that low risk for the PACE loans to be paid back, there really is none. It is important to note that 70% of those loans have interest rates at greater than 6%. And when you have such a guaranteed loan, you might want to take a look at why the interest rates are that high, even though they are lower than credit cards or a second mortgage on a home. So it's really much more of a financial approach than an energy savings approach from a tax perspective. And to show you that, this is the range of the interest rates that are charged on PACE assessments. They are as small as 0.5%, but they are as large as 8.5%. And as I said, 72% of the loans exceed 6% interest. And that was in the 2020 tax year. What was interesting is that we could not really determine by looking at that what's the basis for the variance in the interest rate that's charged, especially since this is based upon the property value and not the credit worthiness of the borrower. Then we took a look at the types of improvements to try to understand what the average cost is as we talk about what's the fair market value for those improvements. It's interesting in the reports, the quarterly reports, is often those items are bundled. So it could be an air conditioner and a generator, or it could be windows and a generator, or it could be solar panels and windows. So it's difficult to determine an individual cost for each one of those. But where we could take a look at when they describe them as one thing that was purchased, what you can see here is what the average cost of those items are. So air conditionings, HVACs, run around $9,000, sometimes as high as $16,000. Of course, I'm sure that's based upon the size of the home and the air conditioning needs. But you can see that they vary most of these loans are not small loans. They're fairly large. We also looked at the duration, and 15 years is the most frequent HVAC duration for the loan. And that seems a little high for how often you have to replace an air conditioner. So we can't tell from looking on our side if the duration of those loans are appropriate or not. So as you look to adding other kinds of improvements, that may be something to take into consideration before you make those changes. What we did try to do is take a look at the most frequent loan duration and of the interest rates for those. And what we found was, again, other than Florida PACE, most of those are in the 6% range. The most frequent duration runs 20 years. And the average financing is over $20,000. And what that really means is that when you're looking at a 6.5% interest, half of the payments are interest and half is principal. When you're looking at 5.5, it's a 60-40. When you're looking at 3.8, it's a 70-30. And when you're looking at 7%, it's a 53-47% ratio of interest to principal payments. And I think sometimes if the taxpayer is aware of that, they can make a much more informed decision. This is taken from a PACE presentation that was done last year. One of the issues that we had was trying to determine from the amount of the loan why it didn't match what appears on the tax rolls. And that's because there are other fees there that I'm sure are disclosed when they actually take out the loan. But these are the fees that the providers had given to us that are added to those loans. And lastly, we took a look, as going through this documentation and this data, took a look at the accuracy and the reporting to assure that there was a 20% threshold for the loans, to assure that no delinquent taxes were there 3 years prior to granting the loan, and to look at the quarterly reports. So when we put this data together, we looked at the tax roll, we looked at the quarterly reports as provided by each of the taxing authorities, and we kind of worked backwards to what was in the clerk of the court, and so that we could see how accurate that information was. We took a look at the delinquent taxes. Since 2017, there were 76 instances of delinquent taxes at the time of loan approval. In 2019, 61 properties went unpaid, resulting in delinquent taxes, but which is very similar to all of the delinquent taxes. About 2% of all the property taxes go delinquent every year, about 25,000. And in 2020, 60 properties were in the 2021 tax certificate sale, meaning that they went to certificate sale to be paid rather than paid by the taxpayer before the sale. And as I mentioned before, only one property had a TDA. So that brought us to the PACE provider reporting. And I want to say that we looked at samples, over 500 of them, and tried to back into those numbers. But the biggest issue that we had is the PACE provider quarterly reports are all in their own format, which made the collation of the data and to be able to do a proper analysis very, very difficult. So some of the issues that you have with quarterly reporting is there a moment in time. We looked at 2020, but we had to go back and look at fourth quarter 2018, for all the quarterly reports for 19 to see if they made the tax roll. Because depending on when they're finished, we don't know if they're going to be on the tax roll or not. So it was difficult to try to marry the data to see that everything that in the tax roll actually appeared on the quarterly reports. So sometimes there's more than one project. So you could finance an HVAC, have that finished, and then put in windows. So trying to track, and that would appear in a different quarterly report. So it was really hard to marry the accuracy of the information to see whether or not that's the appropriate amount that was charged. And they're different. So some include property control numbers, some include addresses, some include the jurisdiction, some leave out when the projects were completed, some leave out the amount financed. So had to marry all of those to try to come up with the 500 that we did come up with. So can't assure the accuracy of 100% of those, but I can tell you that it was very problematic. I tried 4 or 5 different methodologies to try to figure out what was accurate and what was not. I could not find one when we added the actual amount they put in the quarterly report and the interest rate and tie it back to the amount that was on the tax roll. And I'm sure that has to do with other fees and charges, but it's still not clear, and it's hard to reconcile what that looks like. None of the reports had the fair market value, so for each one of the 500, I had to go out to the property appraiser's site and look each one up. So that becomes the importance of being really consistent in how you receive the information from the providers. All of that leads us to what we, as the tax collector's office, has decided to do. To improve the understanding and processing of the PACE assessment, we have hired a PACE program liaison that person is here with us today, and our Chief Excellence Officer. I do have one more slide to go through, but I would like him to come up and say a few words about that new position, if that's all right with the board.
Of course, we'd be delighted to have him back up here.
All right, thank you. We have updated the PACE uniform collection agreement that the providers have to sign for us to do the collection of the taxes, and it now includes a consumer protection and communication for both commercial and residential property owners. We've instituted disclosure forms, which Steve is going to speak to, and we streamlined our process for making changes throughout the year for PACE assessments, which we met with them and they have agreed to do. We also provided this PowerPoint and the detailed report to the Inspector General for use in any future audits and reviews. And copies of the new documents are included in the detailed report, which you received last month. And this last page was just our recommendation of what a year to year would look like, so that the assessments that are made by the providers will actually match the tax roll. And that information has always also been included in the detailed report. Steve?
Thank you.
Good
morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor Kerner. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Administrator Baker. Like yourselves, Tax Collector Gannon is committed to providing the highest level of customer service to the taxpayers and citizens of Palm Beach County. So in order to do that, we've recently created a PACE consumer advocate position. Arthur Hamilton has been hired to fill that role. And if you wouldn't mind, Arthur, standing up for a second. So prior to joining our organization, Arthur spent many years as an auditor for the Department of Agriculture and the School District of Palm Beach County, and we're really excited to have him join our team. Thank you, Arthur. So the uniform collection agreement between the PACE authorities and the tax collector has been amended to require that prior to the execution of any residential PACE funding agreement or a commercial PACE funding agreement for an amount less than $250,000, that a property owner disclosure form will be provided to the property owner. The PACE contractor, the property owner, and the PACE authority will provide the information requested on that form, sign it, and return it to our office. Upon receipt of a property owner disclosure form, our PACE consumer advocate will review the information contained in the form. They'll also review any pertinent documents relevant to the property that are held by the clerk's office, the property appraiser's office, and our office to confirm that the applicant meets the eligibility requirements set forth in state statute and county ordinance for a PACE assessment on the property. Once the consumer advocate has confirmed that the property is eligible for a PACE assessment, he will call the property owner to review the information contained in the disclosure form. He'll explain to them how the PACE assessment will affect their tax bill and the consequences if they do not pay it. And he'll also answer any other property tax related questions that they may have. The PACE advocate will then sign off on the disclosure form, and we will return a copy to the PACE authority. If the advocate's review of the disclosure form or his conversation with the property owner leads to evidence that the property is not eligible for a PACE assessment, then the advocate will not sign the form, and we will notify the PACE authority. And it is our goal to complete this review process within 3 business days of the receipt of a PACE disclosure form. In order to have a PACE special assessment added to a property's tax bill, PACE authorities must submit a non-ad valorem tax roll file to the tax collector's office by September 15th of each year. We'll be keeping records of all the disclosures that we approve throughout the tax year. So each year when we receive that tax roll file from the PACE authorities, we will check it to confirm that we signed off on a disclosure form for all of the properties contained within it. We will not add a PACE assessment to any tax bill for which we did not sign off on a disclosure form for that property, unless it is for a new commercial PACE loan in excess of $250,000. It is our belief that this process is necessary to protect the taxpayers of Palm Beach County. We've heard recently, even from our colleagues in Hillsborough County, that their county saw such significant issues with the PACE program that they've actually suspended any new PACE loans in Hillsborough County for the time being. So thank you for allowing me the time to present that process to you today, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about it if you have any.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have some questions. Does that conclude the tax collector's comments? Very good, thank you. Very informative and an incredible amount of due diligence. We're very appreciative of your efforts, ma'am. Mr. Rudder, are there any other presentations from the government's perspective?
I do believe PACE Industry has got a brief presentation as well. Not sure which representative is going to be doing it.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Sorry.
Good morning.
May I take off my mask?
Yeah, of course. It helps
Thank you.
us here clearly, so thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation and appearance here
Okay,
today.
thank you very much. Hi, all commissioners, staff. Kate Wessner with Y Green Energy Fund. We are one of the PACE administrators for the Green Corridor PACE District. Ours is a residential and commercial program. In my capacity today, I am representing the residential side of the PACE industry, and my colleague, Erin, will be representing the commercial. So if you've got commercial questions, I'm sure she will be happy to address. So I'll start off.
Before you begin,
Yes.
let me just clarify, is there a general agreement by the residential loan or providers that you'll be representing and speaking on all of their behalves?
Yes,
Very
Mayor.
good. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to just provide you some overview of what we've done in this county. I would just like to say thank you to your staff and the Office of Resilience. They've been very great to work with, and open door, always willing to have meetings to kind of talk through any of their questions or concerns, and we look forward to continuing to work with them to make this program better. Okay, so I'll try to go through some of these slides quickly as you've seen them before, but for anyone else who's new to this, hopefully you learned something from this today. So PACE was designed for a public purpose to help property owners have alternative financing to be able to do things that would either help their homes or businesses. And hurricane protection is one of the main purposes of using this program in Florida. Many property owners are using this for impact windows, impact doors, garage doors, new roofs. And so we partnered with the University of Southern Florida on 2 different studies on the benefits of PACE. And this one I think is really important. This point is that for every dollar spent on hurricane hardening to your home specifically, $2.30 on avoided property damage. And in the big scheme of things, this would mean that for every property where a hurricane mitigation project is completed, about $2,200 is saved on your property insurance, estimated property damage avoided, $38,000, displacement cost in the event of a hurricane, about $10,000. And I do have sources to this cited in all my presentations. If you'd like any additional background, I'm happy to provide that later to you. Another study with the University of Berkeley, Berkeley Labs, they did a review of counties that had PACE and counties that didn't have PACE, and they found that counties with PACE programs saw an increase of solar up to 12%, in some cases a month. Now, a lot of this is based on California data, but just to give you the perspective that there is a public purpose to this program. It's hurricane protection, energy consumption, or renewable energy. And this is a representative of just my program, to be fair. The other programs did provide all the other data in advance. But we've done over 6,000 projects in Palm Beach County specifically, and this is a snapshot of the economic and environmental benefits that I hope you take away from this today. Okay, I just want to do a quick review of the process. I know some of the commissioners have been up to speed, but just to quick update for you. So when a property owner applies, they can come to us by either a contractor referral or they can come to us directly. I know as a resident of Palm Beach County, I get mailings probably once a month from Y-Green or a partner that have our logo. So, property owners do come to us directly without necessarily going through a contractor initially. So there is two different ways to find out about the PACE program. Let's say the property owner comes to us directly to keep things simple. They would submit an application, define what kind of project they're trying to do. We would make sure it qualifies under the state statute. They would choose their financing term. That is always up to the property owner. I just like to kind of understate that the property owner chooses how long they want to finance. There is limitations on how long they could finance based on the types of improvements, but that is their choice. And then they would sign their finance documents and receive their disclosures. Then at that point, the property owner would receive a phone call from the PACE providers confirming the terms of the financing with them. So that it is a PACE assessment, it is repaid on their tax bill, that you may have to pay this off if you choose to sell or refinance. All of those things are in the disclosures that are very clear and transparent. And then we would issue a notice to proceed should the consumer still wish to move forward, which would give the contractor and the homeowner the green light that they could do this project, and we would confirm that we would pay for that project. So they would have confidence they didn't have to put any money out of pocket, which I think is a big hurdle for a lot of property owners today. When you're thinking about doing a new roof or new windows, that's at least 50% down payment for most people to order materials. Knowing that the PACE provider will pay 100% of that gives a lot of people a peace of mind that the contractor is not going to take their money and walk off. And then once the project is complete, the homeowner and the contractor both sign a certificate of completion that attests that the project was done in accordance with local code, that they've received all the proper permits, and that the homeowner is satisfied, right? So sometimes there may be disagreements with contractors and homeowners, and so that is the final step telling us that everything is done to their satisfaction. And at that point, we will pay the contractor directly. And then we will record the assessment with the county and all the other things required by law. And so that is the process for a typical residential property owner. If the contractor refers them, it's a very similar process. It's just the contractor refers them to us, but we will always be the one interfacing with the consumer on their disclosures, their finance agreement, the confirmed terms call, which I think is really important. Contractors offer many different types of financing today. I know when I got my AAC, the contractor offered me 4 different ways to pay for it. And I had to take a snapshot and go review it and kind of evaluate my options, right? There's all different ways that contractors will say, here's how you could pay for it. You may be able to pay cash, right? PACE is just one financing option, but we are aware that contractors do promote it. And so we have strict marketing guidelines, which I'll go through later, but I think that's really key is that you all understand that we try to manage how they talk about PACE. Okay, my next slide is residential qualifications. And so I guess I just want to reinforce that any of these statements made here are only reflecting residential. Some of them were JPEGs, and so I wasn't able to edit a lot of these at this late stage, but just know that they're all residential. And so this would be, a lot of things are required in the state statute, and then the PACE providers all have our own additional underwriting criteria. And so some of these I'll try to just highlight which are state and which are additional underwriting. But we have all implemented an additional underwriting criteria in the residential side that incorporates our review if the property owner has the ability to repay the assessment, which would, I think, a lot of the statements made were, some of the concerns were about, does this property owner have the ability to repay? Typically on taxes or HOAs, right, they don't really evaluate your ability to repay, but we understand because the property owners are tied to their property, right, and we want them to remain in the property, that's the point of this program, that it is really important we evaluate that as a consideration. And so we have implemented that on the residential side. We have incorporated ability to pay standards in our underwriting before a homeowner is approved to use this program. Otherwise, all property taxes and assessments have been paid and not been delinquent in the last 3 years or period of ownership. There's no involuntary liens on the property, no notices of default recorded, no the mortgage debt on the property must be current, cannot be delinquent. Mortgage-related debt may not exceed 90% of the fair market value. Total mortgage-related debt plus PACE program financing may not exceed the fair market value of the program, and elements of the credit report, such as mortgage payment history, are necessary to determine eligibility for financing. So for others that have said that we don't check property owner's credit, that is false. We do check property owner's credit. The difference is your credit score does not determine your interest rate, which I think is key in democratizing how this program is used. If I live in one zip code or I have a different earning level, I should be offered the same interest rate as others in this county. And so we believe that is really important to provide that equity. And that we must reasonably determine that the property owner has the ability to repay the annual assessment. So I think that is something that I want to just do a quick overview with you all of how would you qualify. And there is statutory limits on what property owners can borrow. And with, the Florida law as it's written today says without the consent of the loan, lien holders to your mortgage, the total amount of any non-ad valorem assessment for a property under this section may not exceed 20% of the just value of the property is determined by the county property appraiser. So property owners usually don't borrow a maximum amount. I would just say that most of them borrow a much smaller amount. There was representations that your tax bill could potentially increase multiple fold, right? This is a property owner, right? Property owners have the ability to choose what they want to do on their property. And so if that means their taxes go up and they're informed of that, then that is their choice. And lien registry. And so we had heard concerns that there was multiple PACE assessments on a property. Back again to property owners' rights. It is the property owner's decision if they choose to have 2 PACE assessments. They could combine them in one assessment. That is their decision. The PACE industry has created a lien registry to confirm how many PACE assessments or applications are underway so that we are aware of what is happening in that space with regard to the property owner. Okay? And then this is about our financial agreement and residential disclosures. So we heard some concerns that property owners were just signing digital disclosures. Homeowners do have an option to receive printed disclosures. Matter of fact, they can receive them in English, Spanish, Creole. If they speak another language, we will provide language services, translation services upon request. But digital signatures are legally sufficient. And so, especially in the time of COVID, if a property owner chooses to do that digitally, that is their choice. We will gladly FedEx them printed disclosures if they'd like that, and that we call them to review the terms. So perhaps, like many of us, we sign things online, we don't read every single sentence, right? When we call that property owner, we do review the key terms of that financing, that it is not a government program, that there is financing, right? There is interest, how you repay that. All the know before you owe is done in this phone call. It is a live person talking to you as the property owner, asking you in the beginning, do you want to do this call in English? Do you want anyone else on this call, right? Making sure you understand this is a financial transaction you're going under and that you're fully educated on that before we move forward. And so that no construction can begin on the property until that call is complete. We have offered to the county staff that we would be happy to provide dates of when those calls are completed. I know there was some discussion about maybe auditing those calls. And so we have a little bit of privacy concerns around that. It's a public record once we send it to you all, but it is the homeowner's audio recording. So, we'll be happy to work with your staff on trying to find a way to meet their intent. And then the homeowners do have a 3-day right to cancel, like all other types of residential financing, and the homeowners receive a copy of their finance agreement post-closing and completion. Additionally, we send them like an FAQ after closing, right? Should you forget that we told you this was on your tax bill, we're reminding you in multiple ways about that so that you're aware of what you need to do with regard to your escrow payment or saving enough money on a monthly basis to account for that increase. As your staff noted earlier, there is a disclosure requirement per your ordinance. And I do bring copies of this disclosure if you'd like to see it up close. But, we are in compliance with your county disclosure, and this is the terms that that it lists. So we have to put the total amount financed over the term, list of improvements. They're very clear and transparent terms and fees. It is a one-page disclosure. Keep in mind, we have our own 20-page agreement with disclosures, so we put this on top of ours so that the homeowner sees this first. Any additional disclosures would be duplicative and probably confusing to the homeowner. And we remind them that the repayment process is on their property taxes. Failure to repay your property taxes could result in loss of property. There is no discount on the PACE assessment. That is not our choice. That's how the state law was written, and that the lien is on the property. We fully disclose there is a lien on your property until this is repaid in full, and that you have the right of prepayment without penalty on residential properties. Again, 3-day right to cancel, that you may be required to pay this off if you resell your property or you refinance your property. That's not our requirement. That is a bank policy. And then we provide contact information for the PACE provider should the property owner have additional inquiries. Okay, and this is just an example of how we include this in our disclosure. So this is not the county's, this is ours. We disclose, I understand I may be required to pay off the remaining balance of the obligation of the mortgage lender refinancing my property. If I sell my property, the buyer or their mortgage lender may require me to pay off the balance. So we fully disclose that, and next to each one of these provisions is a box for initials. So kind of like when you go through a mortgage application or another type of application, every single provision they have to initial. And then we talk about the tax repayment. Your special assessment payments will be added to your property tax bill, whether you pay your property taxes through your mortgage payment using an escrow account, or if you pay them directly to the tax collector. You'll need to save an estimated amount for your first special assessment. If you pay your taxes through your mortgage lender so that your mortgage payment, back to this escrow issue, I don't want to read it verbatim for you, but you get the hint, right? We tell them that they need to contact their lender if they escrow their property taxes. If you don't escrow your property taxes, you have to save that amount. We cannot force the bank to do anything. By law, we are required to send the banks or any lien holders a notice of the proposed assessment. We comply with Florida law. These are big national banks. Some of them don't know what to do, some of them do, right? But we can't dictate how they do that. The only person that can is their client, the customer. We can give the customer as many reminders as possible, but we're all human. Some people forget, right? And so we've done a lot of things to try to remind them. Additionally, we disclose this in the confirmed terms call, but, we tell them, hey, let me skip ahead, sorry. We tell them that, your taxes are gonna go up at the end of the year. We send them a letter in August, and that's, a snail mail. And they get that in English and Spanish. And then again, an email in September, and then a postcard in October. So there's no failure to remind property owners. I think that's just human nature. Sometimes people forget. And there's not much we could do to legislate that on them. But let me go back and just go through, one of the concerns was the homeowners don't understand their financing, and we believe this confirmed terms call really does help them, walk them through it. If you're using this program, you're already a homeowner. You've received a mortgage at some point, or you've at least signed a purchase and sale agreement at the very least. Homeowners typically have a banking relationship, and they would, at a minimum, be able to receive, refinancing, home equity loans or whatnot from their own bank. And that we do, again, have privacy concerns regarding providing that confirmed terms call with county as its public record, but would be happy to work with your staff on trying to find a way to meet their intent on accomplishing that. Again, here's another sample tax bill reminder. And so the industry has come together over the last about year and a half, 2 years. We've been involved at the state legislature trying to advance consumer protections in the state statute. The previous year it had expansion, as your staff noted. It had seawall and septic to sewer. And unfortunately that didn't help that bill progress. So this year we're looking at consumer protection only. And so we're more hopeful that this bill will have a better chance at success with consumer protection only. And so we'd welcome your support if that's something you all decide to do. So the industry has the residential industry has kind of standardized the way we do this. So we implemented pricing guidelines based on useful life. Interest rates are only fixed. Total maximum financing amount, disclosures, this welcome call, or the confirmed terms call, as we called it, satisfactory completion of work with a certificate of completion, and this lien registry. So we believe this is really important as an industry. We're really working to make improvements. You know, in the very beginning, this was viewed as, you know, just a green energy program, right? And we realized it's more of a financial product. So we've taken this very seriously. All of our CEOs on the residential side come from the financial services industry. So we're really making strides in this. Another concern was contractor oversight. The PACE financing is explained by the contractor. As I noted earlier, contractors talk about a lot of different financing, but the PACE disclosures and finance agreement are with the PACE administrators. Confirmed terms calls are with us. The contractors present other types of options. And these are just more slides on contractor onboarding, how we register them, validate them, train them, activate them. They are not our employees. They are just kind of partners in this, as well as homeowners and business owners. And then again, the different consumer protections that are involved in this. And I'll be happy to go back to these if you have any specific questions. I just want to kind of get to the end. So this is a comparison of consumer protections from PACE versus other types of home improvement financing. And so I would note that, you know, a lot of people compare us to credit cards or maybe bank loans. And so PACE does provide a lot more requirements than these other types of financing. You know, we require the customer and the contractor have to sign off before we issue payment, the 3-day right to cancel, the know before you owe disclosures, confirmed terms call, these things I spoke to you about, the term tied to the useful life of the improvement. And so we believe this is what sets us apart from the other types of financing in the residential space. And then I've got a price comparison, because we heard from some that the interest rates were very high. And I would disagree with that. I think they're comparing us to first mortgages. This is a home improvement product. And, you know, if you go get a home equity line or home equity loan or an unsecured home improvement loan or credit card, right, and you borrowed the same amount, this is what the interest rates would be for similar terms and your estimated monthly payment. And I got this from bankrate.com. And I would say that some people have said, well, I've seen interest rates advertised for 1% or 2%. And what I would tell you is those are teaser rates. Those are introductory rates for maybe your first year. And, you know, you've got a minimum amount to pay that back. There's terms to everything, right? And I'm not saying we're the best thing. We're just one option. In fact, we clearly disclose that in one of our rights and responsibilities, one of our disclosures, that this may not be the best option for you, that you may want to explore other options with your financial advisor or your tax advisor, but it is an option. And I think this should continue to remain an option for property owners here in Palm Beach County. And then we did a snapshot of where projects have been completed and a typical profile for a property owner or project. And so I'd just like to represent the residential side for this purpose. But, you know, we've done almost 6,000 projects, funded over $127 million on the residential side. Average residential projects, $20,000 at about 7% for 20 years. Average monthly payment equivalent would be $180 with a 97% satisfaction rate. And then when you break down the different complaint categories, about over 2% is related to contractors, and a little over half of 1% is related to PACE financing. So I think everybody's very familiar with, you know, complaints typically, you know, not necessarily with your bank, right? It's with the person you bought the product from. And then the average PACE to loan value is 6.9%. Median home value is $335,000. Average property owner age 54 years, and average credit score 704. So I would say that this program is not just meant for people with less than stellar credit or you know, people of lesser means. I think this program is for all different types of property owners and business owners. Okay. And this was on the delinquency data. We did a comparison of delinquency rates compared to in PACE properties with PACE assessments compared to properties with no PACE assessments. And so as you can see up here that the PACE delinquency rate is far less than your average credit card, mortgage, or personal loan delinquency rate. And this is addressing the county staff's request for administrative fees. We understand that they do spend quite a bit of time on working on these reports and communications with different stakeholders. And, we would be happy to talk with them further about how we could assist them in those efforts. We do have another fee we currently pay to your county tax collector here. They charge 2%, the maximum allowed under state law. This is significantly higher than other counties in the Tri-County area. Broward charges 0.01%. And Miami-Dade charges 1%. And what that means is that cost is borne by the consumer every year on their PACE assessment. They pay that. So if I pay, if I have a $20,000 project and I pay for it over 20 years, typical customer, typical project, that's $400 I'm going to pay to the tax collector over the life of the assessment. Here's a breakdown of what these 3 districts, I'm missing 1 district, but 3 districts of what they've paid the tax collector since inception of the program. Our district that I represent has paid almost $200,000. Florida PACE Funding Agency, $61,000. Florida Green Finance, $107,000. So we just wanted to give you guys a full picture of that. And then in respect to the quarterly reports, we do provide a very thorough reporting. We are happy to work with your staff on trying to put together a standard or uniform report that they'd like to see. I think, there's a lot of changing methodologies over time, so we probably need to work out some of that, but we're happy to continue working with them on how to improve that. And so I guess to close out, we would say that if you do consider making changes to this, we would just like, for the quarterly reporting, we'd like to work with the staff on maybe identifying the different methodologies used to determine those numbers. We would ask that you don't require a wet signature for property owners, as we believe that would be onerous on them, not necessarily needing that, and they may want to expedite the process. State legislation will likely address your concerns regarding consumer protections and ability to pay. The confirmed terms call, audit capabilities, we're happy to work with you to find a middle ground, and that we would request no additional program fee, as we already pay very high fees to the county tax collector, and the cost is always borne to the consumer. Thank you all very much. We appreciate your commitment to continuing to improve this program, and I'll be available for questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Is there a similar presentation on the commercial side?
Yes, and I only have 4 slides.
All right.
just so you know. My name is Erin Dady. I work with the Florida Green Finance Authority program, and specifically for Petros PACE Finance. They are the commercial provider under that program. And I've been working on PACE for about 11 years since the original statutory authorization. Just a very quick one background slide. PACE is not a loan. It is an assessment program, and there is a Florida Supreme Court case that has upheld that as an assessment authorized by the Florida statute, section 163.08. The issue of loan versus assessment was a core issue in this case. It was fully briefed to the Florida Supreme Court, and they declined to change the perspective of the law or the interpretation of the law that this was a loan versus an assessment. The reason this is an important issue is because we've been provided with documents, specifically the new tax collector agreement, that has a disclosure that would require us to tell people this is a loan, and we don't have the legal authority to do that because the Florida Supreme Court has said that this is an assessment program. So I just wanted to clarify that. Commercial PACE is different. The deals are different, the projects are different, the negotiations between the property owner and the financing entity are involved in far more significant time frames. Nationally, the average commercial PACE transaction is $1.5 to $2 million. So commercial property owners are fairly sophisticated in knowing what the obligation is that they're undertaking with regard to commercial PACE. It's important because commercial PACE hasn't really had the same same uptake in Palm Beach County as it's had in other local government jurisdictions. Kate's already alluded to the fact that the program fees are high, but it's also because certain elements of your existing ordinance are related to residential consumer protections that make the negotiations between the commercial property owner and the financing entity more difficult, and they make them more challenging. So what we would also suggest to you is the fact that we would like to see the ordinance opened up and allow the industry to work with your staff to clearly address some of these commercial issues within the ordinance. We've raised this issue to staff previously, and the response has been that staff didn't feel that the board had directed that kind of discussion to happen in the commercial context with the ordinance. So what we'd like to do is work with staff to do that, to make PACE more viable from the commercial perspective throughout the county. Any administrative fees that would be considered also, we have to remember that due to the size of the projects for commercial PACE, we would not want some kind of percentage, because for the same amount of work with lesser deals that are happening, the program is not as onerous on the administrative time with regard to commercial versus residential. So we'd like to make sure that any administrative fee does not work an unintended consequence and further suppress the development of commercial PACE as a solution for property owners within Palm Beach County. That's it. I'm happy to take any questions with regard to commercial. I know you have a lot of public speakers, so I'll stop in case there are any further questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Erin. So we have a couple public comment cards. I think it would be appropriate to get through those before we get into too many questions by members of the board, if that's all right. All right, so the first one is Jennifer Rojo Suarez, who's available for questions on behalf of, it doesn't say, but did you want to speak?
No, I just, I'm here with Renew Financial, so if there's any.
Renew Financial, all right. We have Ellen Bogdanoff on behalf of Y Green is available to speak or answer any questions as needed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have Ellen Bogdanoff. Just one quick comment. We will maybe have a report for you after. We have done a significant public records request to try to get the backup on some of the comments in the tax collector's PowerPoint. So once we have all of the backup and the information, we'll be in a better position to address some of the comments that were made there. So I just wanted to let you know that.
All right, wonderful. Any time frame projected on? I know it's a function of getting the public records first.
Right. We had a certified check for about $900, and we delivered that, and however long it takes, that would actually be a question for the tax collector, because there's a lot of information that we requested.
All righty, thank you. Carrie Barsh, I think, on behalf of Greenworks Lending.
I think it's still good morning. Good morning. My name is Carrie Barsh, attorney at Greenberg Troy with local offices at 777 South Flagler. I'm here today with my partner Bob Sanders, and we're here in support of the comments by our colleague Aaron Deddy. We represent Greenworks Lending. Greenworks is one of the commercial PACE providers in Palm Beach, and we request that you allow us to work with your professional staff to open up the ordinance with Taylor amendments that would both facilitate and improve CPACE in Palm Beach County. So we just want to support this effort, and just to let you know we're here today in that regard.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Neil Schiller on behalf of Renew Financial.
I think you should mark the tape. I'm not speaking.
But you are available for questions.
I am available.
Of course. All right, and Chris Peterson.
Morning, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Chris Peterson. I represent Fortify Financial. We're a PACE provider under the FPFA. I'm talking about residential. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I just want to shed a bit of light on the evolution of this program. It's only been in the last year and a half or so, 2 years, that the heads of all of these companies for the residential side, they've been replaced. And they've been replaced with seasoned financial veterans. This is a new a newer program, and when it started, it was a lot of policy folks that got in the heads of these companies, and they were ultimately replaced. The first thing that these CEOs did was get together and say, let's put together some consumer protections. So when you see some of the information coming on the tax collector side, and then you hear what's coming from the PACE side, it's like, well, what is this timeline here? The timeline is we just implemented these consumer protections over the last couple years. And I'll tell you, we have seen, albeit a small amount, some issues, but most of these issues have been solved straight away with that confirmed terms call. No other financing mechanism will call you on the phone and make sure that you understand every single term of that contract. And I'll tell you what, it reconciles what the contractor says. If the contractor says something that's inappropriate, we find out right away, and we can take action on that contractor, and we can correct that information to make sure this is still an appropriate form of financing for those consumers. But each and every one of these consumer protections that have been implemented, they solve for a particular issue that we've seen. And again, the results have been tremendous. And I would encourage you to understand that the way that the direction that this industry is going is absolutely in the right direction. And we've seen a lot of things over the last 10 years. Most of them have been solved by just communicating and being transparent and making sure that we're doing good business, because we take the responsibility on that tax roll. We take that seriously, but this is an option. At its core, PACE is an option. We need to make sure that this is available for folks that need it. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll have Linda Smith.
Thank you. Linda Smith, Jupiter, Florida. I want to thank you. I plugged in my electric vehicle into your new EV charging station on the second floor of the Government Center parking garage using my ChargePoint account. I'd like to speak on supporting the PACE program and the Office of Resiliency in their work. I have personally installed solar and encourage Palm Beach County residents who can do it and buy their solar panels locally from Solar Tech, perhaps, just shameless plug. I believe we should expand maybe to the septic tank, but not to the seawall repair. I believe that's just good money going after bad at this point. And I believe my home was converted from septic to sewer using my tax bill probably back around 2010. So that was already in place. I'm not sure where that falls with this PACE conversation, and I think it's about ready to get paid off on my home. I do believe education of consumers is very important, and I think the providers do need to be held accountable, and I appreciate a lot of their comments. I do believe we need a consistent reporting form, and I would like to try to get people to go to the most cost-effective way to get their projects funded. And I did agree that an HVAC term of 15 years might be a little too long, because I'll be surprised they last that long. And that's my comments.
Very good. Thank you so much for your comments. And we'll finish here with Mr. Drew Martin.
Drew Martin, I'm speaking on behalf of the Loxahatchee Group of the Sierra Club. And I'm a former bank loan officer, so I have some experience with loans. I'm really concerned about consumer protection for the consumer side. I'm not concerned about the commercial side, because generally somebody who's going to get a $1.5 million assessment knows what they're doing, but I'm very concerned about consumers. And this concern has been elevated because I've been assisting my mother, who is getting older, and she really doesn't always understand what she's signing. I don't know what they mean by wet signature. Does that mean that you spill coffee all over the document before you sign it? It would be nice if they used terms like, yeah, you sign a real piece of paper. I'm really concerned because I understand that people have lost their houses in other parts of the country because of this. And I'm concerned because the Sierra Club, we like the idea of doing things for the environment and providing people that assistance. But we are concerned when doing something for the environment ends up costing somebody their home, and that, and these improvements. And people, if they sign a credit card, that's one thing, because, a credit card does not take your home. These are assessments. people can lose their home. Only so far this has only happened to one person. I'm really cannot believe the interest rates on this because I think they're very high. They're very high at a time when the interest rate on my savings account is 0%. I think I had a $10,000 savings account. I made 39 cents. So, you know, I really question at a time when the government's doing all this Build Back Better. You know, I thought this program really was supposed to give people a deal. And I don't understand why it has to go to 18%. That makes no sense to me. Why does someone need 18%? There's no risk. This is a no-risk program. Interest rates, the interest rates are high because lenders take on risk. There is no risk. They're going to get the person's house if they don't pay back. So why are the interest rates commensurate with a second mortgage? I don't understand that. So as someone who advocates for the environment, I want to see, and I think Linda Smith showed how this can be a good program for people who understand it and who are wealthy or somewhat successful and have the money to pay it back. But I'm really worried about contractors approaching people who are not sophisticated, talking them into doing something they don't understand, signing an agreement on the computer. I like the idea that you will have a disclosure person call them. You didn't set the timer on me.
Actually, you just nailed it. It's 3 minutes and 2 seconds, so.
All right. I have a lot more to say, so I'm very sorry that you were timing me. All right.
I appreciate the comments, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the industry or the tax collector, but I do think the 18% is a reference to the tax deed auction. It's not imputed to any of the PACE providers here. So if you don't pay your taxes, there's a process where the tax deeds get sold, and then the consumer that purchased it will accrue 18%, if I recall correctly, on the outstanding debt that's been paid on behalf of the delinquent taxpayer. Not to suggest that I'm enamored with the rates that have been presented here today on behalf of PACE, but it's certainly not 18%.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I thought I was coming here to talk about electric cars today, and so fortunately I am familiar with the PACE program, having worked in banks before.
Well, maybe in the future we can purchase an electric car with a PACE assessment.
Well, I like that idea.
All right, well, that concludes comments by members of the public. So we are now in discussion, unless there were other comments that, Patrick, you wanted to make. I think it's an appropriate time to start taking questions and fleshing out some issues. So we'll start with Commissioner Marino and then go to Commissioner McKinley. What's that? All right, Commissioner McKinley, then Commissioner Marino, and I'm sure I should put my colleague, Commissioner Bernard, in this queue as well. All right.
I have a question, if it's okay for Kate to answer.
Oh, absolutely.
Kate, when you showed your slide of where your program participants reside, it was very obvious to me that there was nothing out in the western portions of our county. Can you tell me why?
Sure, Commissioner. I think that we do market to everyone who's already pre-qualified, and so I know that kind of removes some people from the equation, and also that if there's contractors in that community, there are referral basis also, so we could work to improve our outreach to some of the western communities. I think that could be something that we could work on.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mayor Kerner, my comment would only be, I think that this is a tremendous option to county residents, and that they're adult enough to make the decision themselves on how to best finance repairs in their own homes. And I do support the recommendations that were made by both of the presenters about opening up the ordinance to make it some of those requirements more specific to the commercial environment and have separate requirements for the residential requirement. I thought all the presentations were very good today. I appreciate the conversation.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley. We'll go now to Commissioner Marino.
Thank you. On the property appraiser's presentation, page 14, our big concern is that people are losing their homes because they are their assessment hasn't been paid. Can you clarify something you said? Did you say that only one home in 3 years was sold through a tax deed sale?
Only one had a tax deed application, which means they went 3 years in delinquency, and then the investor pushed it to go to sale, so they paid it off before it was sold.
Okay, so no one has lost their house
They
due to
have
this
not.
program?
No.
Okay. And I do like, actually, Linda Smith, thank you very much. I do like the septic to sewer being included in all of this. And I know there was a comment about how the interest rate is, we don't know what the basis for the interest rate is with the PACE program. Is there someone who can enlighten us on how the interest rate is assessed or chosen or compared to something else? I do know that I do see the comparison. It is less expensive than, if you're using your maximum on your credit card or anything like that. But is there a way that you come up with the 6% or so for the interest rate?
So my name is Chris Peterson. The interest rate is typically tied to a couple different factors. One is the cost of capital, and the second is the cost of doing business. We borrow money in order to lend it in order to cover the assessment contracts. And then we have administrative fees. We have tax collector fees. We've got property appraiser fees. There's a lot of different stops along the way before you end up with basically with your profit and entrepreneurial profit, correct? So at the end of the day, as the more providers have come into this industry, the interest rates have actually gone down. When I started, even 6 years ago, you were seeing upwards of 9%. Now that there's 4 separate providers for residential, those rates are average weighted at 6.25. And if you think about it, for a non-FICO based product, it's very acceptable. Risk is not the only determinant in interest rates. There's the cost of doing business. And so if you look at our process and all the different consumer protections we've implemented, they're very time consuming, they're onerous. It's the right thing to do, but those things also cost money. But again, those interest rates have actually come down over the last 4 or 5 years. So hopefully that helps to shed a little bit of light on it.
It does, thank you.
Very good.
And Kate, when you were talking with your slides about the consumer complaints, can you be a little bit more specific about what the complaints were in reference to?
Sure. Yes, Commissioner Marino, they could range anywhere from a homeowner being upset that they have to pay off their PACE assessment if they're choosing to refi, or they could be upset with their contractor because their contractor hasn't completed something that they promised them, right? So it ranges, the gamut. It just really depends. And so we did break it down between what their concern, their complaint or concern is about PACE, or is it about the contractor? And as you saw, over 2% of the complaints are related to contractor issues, and a little over half of 1% is related to PACE financing. So I think that speaks for our record that we've done a good job of informing the property owners of what they're getting into before they move forward.
And how do you vet your contractors?
If I could pull up the slides, if that's still available. If not, I have it on my printed version. But we do review that they're, go back to, sorry, let's just have it. We do review that they're properly licensed. We review their DBPR to see how many complaints they have, Google reviews, Dun & Bradstreet, a number of different things. It's okay, I got it here. I don't want you to have to scramble. Okay. But we will check social media reviews of them. Oh, thank you so much. I'll just go right back here. So when we onboard them, we review financial documents, how long have they been in business, proper insurance, a background check, and then we have a compliance team that determines, they have decent credit, right, or where do they stand financially, their license status, how long have they been in business, again, social media reviews, Better Business Bureau, criminal background as well, and then we go through a training process where we teach them about the PACE program and how it works with their products, and then we train this, we go through a training process with them about the disclosures, fraud prevention, non-discrimination, senior financial abuse, all of these things that, they need to walk a very straight line with us. And then we'll activate them in our program. They will go through continuous education on a, I think, annual basis with us, and we review their license requirements on a regular basis as well. But should we find, and they sign a contract with us, a contractor participation agreement that says how they will operate and how they will do business with us. If we find that they're not in compliance with that, we have the ability to remove them from our program. Initially, we may monitor them as a new contractor to kind of identify their business practices and how they provide documentation to us. If we think that there may be issues for concern, we can suspend them from our program so they can no longer use that, and we do share that with the other residential PACE providers. They do a regular meeting on these kind of things to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all doing this, the same thing, kicking these contractors out of our programs, and then terminating them. They can no longer do business. They can't be remediated, right? Sometimes it's one new person that just joined the company that may be, not as up to speed. And so we have to do continuous, regular outreach to these companies. And we do have a dedicated team of account managers that work, in Palm Beach County that work in your local regions to train these contractors and make sure that they're doing it properly.
Thank you for going back over that. I had excused myself when you were going through these slides, so I appreciate
No,
that.
I didn't really go into detail, to be fair, Commissioner Marino.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Very good. The tax collector would like to make some comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment would be to clarify two things. To clarify something that was said, the property appraiser does not get a fee in this program. Okay. But if you look on page 19, it outlines the fees, of which fees are wrapped in that go to the provider also. And if you go to page 16, I think the question that once again needs to be asked and answered is, this is a loan that is going to get paid 100% of it. Then why are the interest rates so high? Because there should be a direct relationship, and you don't see that in these interest rates, and that's on page 16 of our presentation. And that's really, when you look at how to protect the consumer, why someone is paying 8.5% or 8.5% for a loan, when this loan is 100%. There is no risk here. Thank you.
Is it the local government's within the purview and authority of a local government to cap the rate that it's not? That would probably function of the legislature, if at all.
I don't have the answer to that.
So I was looking at Bob as well to
I
see
think
if there's any authority.
we'd have to research that issue.
And I'll just get my questions out of the way real quick then, and then we'll get to Commissioner Bernard. I guess this is directed at the providers. There was a reference to other financing options are presented during the dialogue with the consumer. What are the other financing options presented?
Mayor Kerner, to clarify, we don't present other financing options to consumers.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, no, what contractors may.
Okay.
And I know, like I said, when I got my AC, there was like Service Finance or Service America, which was like a, just a typical, I guess, home improvement loan, right? It'd be 0% interest up to, 6 months or 12 months, I think. And then after that, it jumped in the 20%. And then, there's other ones that are minimum amounts you pay per month on, automatic withdrawal. I mean, everybody has different ways, kind of like seller financing in the real estate business. So it just depends on what those contractors, they themselves offer. I know there's some home services companies that offer those types of programs as well. And I think they're all very competitive and comparable.
Okay. And maybe just stay up here for 1 second. What is improvement pricing review?
So that's determining that the pricing for that type of improvement is within that range. So, for example, we've got a lot of data on projects completed in Palm Beach County, whether they're HVACs, windows, whatever. Should a project that's submitted go on the higher end, that will raise red flags. And we'll ask more questions of the homeowner and the contractor, and they need to be able to answer that to provide us enough backup or documentation to support that. Why does it cost that much? Well, it's not just the HVAC. It's also insulation. It's also ductwork. Right? We're not a party to their home improvement contract, which I think people fail to remember. We are just their financing mechanism to pay for that. So what they agree to with their contractor are completely different. They could have a maintenance. I know I did that with Macy. I paid for the maintenance services for however many years, right? And that's helpful, so I don't have to figure out how to do that myself, but there is a cost to that. And so sometimes instead of just writing HVAC, it's HVAC insulation. Sometimes electrical panel if you're doing a water heater, right? There's all these ancillary projects. And so that's usually the explanation when we get a higher end cost for an HVAC of $16,000 is that there's more to the story.
Okay. And is it within, from your perspective, is it within the purview of local government to define what projects should or should not be contemplated under this agreement?
The state statute, which I know many of you have served before, and the state legislature says that properties can use this to either help reduce their energy consumption, create energy through renewable energy, or wind mitigation improvements. In terms of additional eligible improvements, I believe that would be up to the state legislature. Although I'm not an attorney, so I would say consult your legal team for further evaluation on if that's something you all have in your purview.
Okay. And I bring that up because Ms. Smith made some comments about imposing some limitations. I think it was like reference to seawall or something like that. And I wasn't sure if we had the authority, and it seems like it's been preempted in this exclusive province of the legislature. Well, those are all my questions. Thank you. We'll go now to Commissioner Bernard and then to Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to thank staff for bringing this item to us and also to get information from our tax collector and also from the providers. I do have some questions that I'd like to ask, and I'm not sure who can answer it. The first question is, in regards to the interest rate, what's the minimum interest rate that someone can be charged for a PACE assessment? And also, what is potentially the maximum that someone can be charged for a PACE assessment?
Hi, Commissioner Bernard. Kate Wessner here. I believe I can speak for our company. The others, sometimes we structure it a little bit differently, but I think our lowest that I'm aware of historically was about in the 5%. I believe there may be some other times where they could restructure that a little bit lower. You can kind of do like seller's points or buyer's points, right? There's all these different ways that they can kind of structure your project. But 5% on the lower end for all intents and purposes, and on the higher end about 7%. And that is a fixed interest rate. And let's say that you choose a 10-year term versus a 20-year term. Your interest rate will be determined how long you finance, not on your credit score, right? So if I've got a 600 credit score or a 700 credit score, I will be offered the exact same interest rate depending on how long I finance. So if you chose 10-year, it could be like 6%. You chose 15-year, it could be like 6 3/4, right? That's how it will vary. It will vary based on the length of your term.
And there is evidence. Sorry.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question is, if the average, Kate, you had mentioned that on one of your slides, it seemed like the average interest rate was 7.39%. So I'm trying to understand, like, if it's 7.39 average, how is the maximum about 7% when an average is 7.39? So it just seems to me that some people are being charged a little bit above that 7% and maybe probably close to 8 or 9 or 10%. So I'm just trying to understand it a little bit. Is there a maximum that we know that's being charged to the property, the property owner?
Commissioner Bernard, I don't know necessarily about the other providers and our interest rates collectively. I'd be happy to do more research and provide that to you, what we've done historically and what we currently offer today. As my colleague mentioned earlier, that as this program is scaled, as we've grown, there's thousands of projects that have been done, it makes us all more competitive. And so that has brought the interest rates down over time. I think initially there may have been some higher ones, and I do have to admit this slide is a little old. Not that old, but probably from earlier 2021. So.
And further to that point, and this I think the tax collector can correct me, but from their own presentation that we have here in print copy, there was a significant amount of loans made. I know we're not supposed to call them loans, but bear with me. There was a significant amount of assessments made at 0.49 to up to 6%. In fact, it looks like maybe most were made between 0.49 and 5%. That's just after a very quick review of that slide. And I do think that the tax collector wanted to weigh in on this point as well, Ms. Wagner.
I will weigh in on that. I was going to make a different point. What we did is we looked at their quarterly reports and we tried to combine them because they are in different formats, and looked at what they reported as the interest rate on those projects. I did also try to take a look to see if windows were charged, a different interest rate than a generator. I couldn't discern that across the data. That's why our comment is couldn't understand the basis for the interest rate. I even tried it by city. So, are we targeting the people in Boca? And we're not. I mean, I couldn't find any correlation between the interest rate charged and the improvement, or even the duration, other than looking at the HVAC seemed to be financed longer than the life, but I'm not an energy expert. So other than trying to look that up myself, that I don't think that was within my purview, but I did try to look for commonality of interest rates for type of improvement, interest rate by city, interest rate by just to see, even by year, to see if, like the 0.49, I believe, is just in 1 year. So, I was trying to make those correlations, but couldn't make them. So that made it difficult. The other piece of that is there are some times when I might get a PACE assessment from one provider and also from another, and I found that those interest rates could differ even on the same property. So I might get 6% on one and 4.5% on the other. So that's what made me look to see if it was by type of improvement, but I couldn't validate that that was the case. So we don't know what the rationale was for how the interest rate gets charged. But the other point I wanted to make, not related to interest rate, was that the discussion is good, that it seems to land on the side of making sure that the consumer is protected. So for me, all of this work had two outcomes. Make the reporting consistent so that we can look apples to apples for the information that we need. And secondly, to make sure that even though, I know myself, most of us sign on the dotted line and don't read the fine print. So I think all the consumer protections, whether it's from the provider or from the tax collector or from the Office of Resiliency, will make the program much more solid, because there's nothing wrong with having everybody have impact windows. Right? So making sure that the interest rate is appropriate, making sure that the homeowner understands fully and accurately what they're getting into, because sometimes even though we remind, I get reminders of things all the time, and I may read them and I may not, depending on my perspective and what that understanding is. So I think this presentation put a very bright light on what consumers can expect. And for that, none of this was wasted.
No, for sure, and I know that I can speak on behalf of the board when we share that perspective, and we appreciate the conversation. Commissioner Bernard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next question that I do have is in regards to, like, how do you determine the savings or the potential savings to the taxpayers in terms of getting a PACE loan? It seems like when I listened to the tax collector's presentation, it seems like on average, the taxpayer is spending about $2,500 a year in terms of assessment on their tax bills, and the savings seems to be about 200. I don't know if it's 200 per month. So I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the savings to the taxpayer for doing one of these, let's say, a PACE assessment?
Thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for a great question. We partnered with the University of South Florida to come up with some estimates. These are not guaranteed savings on an individual project level, but in our reporting, these are estimates from the aggregate level. And so I'd be happy to provide that methodology to you and your staff to review. But, you know, savings based on energy savings, I'm going to give you an example. If I had an AC that was 15 years old and really not working, you know, my AC bill is going to be a lot different when I get a replacement that is working and is more efficient, and I'm be able to air condition my whole home, right? So there may not be a dollar for dollar savings based on costs. It's going to depend on usage. It's going to depend, windows, maybe your windows are quite expensive. You got the most premium kind, right? Maybe your insurance savings is a quarter of the cost. There is no guaranteed dollar for dollar savings, and I think that's a fallacy to assume that there should be, because property owners may need improvements and may not necessarily see a guaranteed savings, and they should have the ability to do that. This is very similar to HOAs, right? I think that's something to keep in mind. A lot of HOAs, we're doing a roof replacement in my community right now. Special assessments, right? Are they sitting here underwriting people, doing a confirmed terms call, limiting interest rates, these sorts of things? That's a needed improvement, and we want that, and we have the legal right to do that. And then I just wanted to provide some more context there. There's a lot of questions about interest rates. I did a quick check this morning on bankrate.com, the best equity line of credit, HELOC rate September 2021. Third federal savings loan, you borrow anywhere between 10 grand to 200,000 for 10-year draw, 30-year repay, anywhere from 2.2% to 18%. That's third federal. Then we have Bank of America, starting at 4.7% for a HELOC, and TD banks starting anywhere between 3.99 to 18%. There is statutory limits in this Florida law on interest rates that currently exist. So I just wanted to make sure I provide you with that information.
Aaron, thank you very much you mentioned, the HELOC, the 2.2% to 18%, but when you do a home equity line of credit, it's recorded as a mortgage on your property, and there's a risk in terms of that, that the bank is taking in regards to giving that home equity line of credit. And so, there's a risk, but in terms of this assessment, it's basically a guaranteed payment that, that the PACE lender, they're going to get that money 100%. And so we don't even have an interest rate, like what's the highest that someone can be charged on a PACE loan, and not even, and how do you determine that? So, it's 100% guaranteed that they're going to get their money. So that's the only difference. And if it's a home equity, it's a risk. And if the person doesn't pay, they can foreclose, but it's not guaranteed that they can recover all their funds. I do have a question. Aaron, you had mentioned, there was a question that there was a statement by the tax collector in regards to escrow payment potentially doubling. Aaron, what can the industry do in regards to figure out a way to, I know these are big banks, and that they, like the lenders don't control how how these banks address the potential to get an escrow, an escrow shortage that, next year would mean that, that they could get a double payment on their escrow account. What can the industry do or to work with the banking industry to try to work with the banks to try to record that to let them know that they're going to have this assessment, so in that way they can prepare, so in that way it's not such a shock for that consumer?
Commissioner Bernard, Kate Wessner here. Thank you very much for that good question. I believe we've made significant improvements over the years to help remind property owners about their need to work with their lender. As I stated earlier, there is a law for the Florida 16308 requires us to notice lien holder of the proposed special assessment, and we do comply with the law for that requirement. And so, what additionally could we do with banks? I would say banks are our biggest opponent. We are their competition in the marketplace, and so I don't think they're going to be as willing to come to the table, but I'm willing to do outreach to our local community banks, credit unions. I have done a lot of presentations to the Florida Realtors and different associations and groups, so I am happy to take any ideas or suggestions you have locally in the community to try to help and facilitate that.
Thank you, Kate. Sorry, I said Aaron. I don't know why I said Aaron. Another question, since you're here, Kate. I heard the potential to have numerous PACE assessments on a property. How's that? I know. Just kind of explain a little bit. How's that determined? So in that way, can you have like a potential of having 3 or 4 different assessments on a property?
Commissioner Bernard, great question. That is not very likely to have that many, although it is possible to have more than one. We've had many repeat customers, right? They've used us 1 year and they say, yeah, this is great. I just need to do this right now, but next time I want to do this. And I do recall advising them, hey, you may want to consider doing it at one time, but they may know their own financial situation and that it may be wise for them to pay one off or to get through with one before they enter into another, or figure out, what's best for them financially. So yes, in some cases there is multiple assessments. I don't think that's in many cases at all, but that it just shows that the PACE is working and these people are happy and they want to use it. They want to use our product again.
Okay, the last 2 questions I do have, which is in regards to refinancing or selling the property. On the residential side, if you're refinancing the property, is there a prepayment penalty on refinancing the property or selling the property? How does that work?
Great question, Commissioner. There is no prepayment penalty for property owners that want to pay this off early because they're refinancing or selling. We saw that when interest rates are really low for mortgages, there was an uptick in people doing payoffs, and we realized that that could change in the future. But we have eliminated the prepayment penalty. In fact, your ordinance does not allow us to charge a prepayment penalty. And another feature we have added to our program was we've allowed property owners to make down payments, installments over time to lower their principal and ultimately lower the interest they pay. And that's a service we're providing to your constituents, allowing them to pay it down. So maybe they've got a $25,000 assessment and each year they take, their tax return, and they make a principal down payment. We're happy to try to assist them in reducing their costs over time.
Okay. I just make a last comment. Thanks for answering the question, Kate. The staff had presented this to us in regards to, what can we do as a commission to strengthen consumer protection? And I know for me, since staff has worked on this, and I just, my recommendation would be for us to have staff to continue to work with the industry, work with tax collector Gannon, and to see what can we do in terms of making sure that we provide more we're able to get better reporting from the providers, and also what can we do in regards to consumer protection to make sure that we're always trying to protect our residents in the county. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard. Commissioner Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for all the presentations this morning. So let me start with the commercial, on the commercial side, so this will be a little quicker. Just giving direction to, staff was looking for direction. I would like to agree with Commissioner McKinley, and that, look to work with the industry, separate them out. They shouldn't be under the same, same requirements. It's a very different, it's a different market, it's a different, it's just a different product. And to the tax collector, I would ask that you look at that as well, based on the commercial side. 2 points on assessments that are, where you're talking about over $1 million seems, and maybe you can do some kind of a flat fee. I just did a back of the napkin while we were sitting here, and it looks like on average you're collecting per year, if I read the numbers properly, about $50 per year per assessment you're collecting in terms of fees, based on the numbers that you guys provided today. I have a question. Now this goes back to this, and I'm not sure who can answer this. I noticed there's a three-day right to cancel that on the residential side, but the tax you guys are going to be putting in place, where you're going to be reaching out to the folks, and you say you're going to be getting that done in 3 days. How do the two time frames work together?
Is it okay if I answer that, Mayor Kerner?
Of course.
Thank you.
It's not going to be me.
It's a good question. So the agreement that we've put in place is that they cannot move forward with the financing agreement until we've signed out on that disclosure form. So that 3-day clock for the borrower or prospective borrower wouldn't start until after we sign the disclosure.
So
so they would submit the disclosure to us, we'd review it, assuming it passes, we'd sign it, then they let the PACE authority know we signed it, then they would move forward executing the financing, then the 3-day clock would start for the consumer.
So how long, so if I needed a roof badly, how long would I have to wait?
Well, the maximum that we're shooting to finish our review process in maximum 3 days.
So
certainly
3
we try to
days.
finish it faster if we could.
You guys it would take at least 3 days on your side for somebody before a contractor is going to go to work. They're going to wait 3 days to make sure that the deal's good.
I would just say we haven't committed to this process.
But I'm sorry?
We have not committed to this process in writing.
Okay. I think I think my colleagues covered a lot of the questions I have. I think, I think to me this is another mechanism for people to make improvements to their homes. I think there is a sense of equity involved, because it isn't based on your financial score, more the fact that you are a homeowner and that you have some ability to repay this, because I know there's wide swings in the marketplace depending on what your score was, and you may have, as we know, a lot of people have been through a lot this last 2 years. Their credits, probably a lot of people's credit got hit pretty hard because they weren't able to make certain payments over time, and so this may in fact provide an opportunity for a little more balance in the marketplace for some folks that potentially could be hit pretty hard. I think I would like to just give direction to staff to go ahead and continue to work with the industry, to work together in trying to streamline the reporting, get consistency. I think the issue came up today with the consistency of the reporting, that we figure out a way to do that, so there's an apples to apples comparison, and maybe a little less time. As it relates to the fee, I don't think I don't think the cost of this program should be borne across all the taxpayers of Palm Beach County. I think it's, you know, the cost should fall to the folks that are either making the money off this program or the people that are taking advantage of it. But not every taxpayer in the county should bear that cost totally. So, you know, I don't know if there's a way to work together on that to figure something out. But I know obviously if there's staff time involved, and I honestly, I think this is if this is a program that's going to really save energy, give people alternatives for creating new forms of energy. And I did have an opportunity right here in Palm Beach County. We have the president of the National Solar Association, Solar Home Installers Association, is here in Palm Beach County. He represents their trade union or their trade group. And I went out and visited with him. He's actually located in District 2 and had a conversation with him. And he said it is something that they use as part of their industry in helping people to get solar on their homes. So to that extent, that would be also a really good thing. But yeah, I think you know, we're seeing this program is new, and you know, obviously changes sometimes need to be made, and the fact that people are keeping a good eye on it, I think, is a benefit to everybody, and so.
All right, very good. Thank you, Commissioner Weiss. Commissioner McKinley.
Yeah, just a follow-up question to Megan. Megan, on the administrative fee portion of this, how many counties in Florida, not including a fee that's being charged by tax collectors, how many counties are charging fees?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not aware of any other county that is charging a fee for the staff program administration, so we would be the first to be looking at that.
And how much of a burden is the staff review of this program to Palm Beach County?
I think we've estimated that we've got a half full-time employee equivalency that's evolved over the past couple of years, and that's only going to continue to grow. And that's just the person doing it day in, day out, not including county attorney's office, myself, Megan, others. So I think it's safe to estimate we'll be close to the equivalent of a full-time employee in the next year or two at the rates we're seeing the utilization continue.
But no other county is collecting a county administrative fee.
Not that we're aware of, and I don't know if they do it by the same scale and if they have the same number of requirements and obligations. If it's just accepting of applications, we have more involved requirements in our ordinance that have evolved, and that's kind of why we're here now, as we've learned through that and brought it back, and working with industry might be a need to make some modifications. But I don't know how we would compare apples to apples with others by virtue of our requirements.
But wouldn't it be fair to say that part of the reason we created this Office of Resiliency a few years ago was to do what we could on the county's end as responsible advocates for Palm Beach County to encourage renewable and alternative energy sources and make these types of home improvements? And this is why we created the office. Now we've put all of these tax dollars into this office and the positions, and now we want to charge a fee on top of that office that we've already created for this purpose?
I think when the office was created and the position was originally funded, 2014, 2015, and then our first director, there are a number of tasks that flowed with it. Certainly the board took its time evolving with the PACE and adopting the PACE ordinance. I remember it. There was a lot of discussion about it. It's one of the functions that flows to the office. I think what we've learned, though, is as this, in Megan's director term and being staffed up, we're finding for the first time how much work is involved in actually applying the ordinance in conjunction with the other work she has had to do as well. You might remember when the office was originally created, it wasn't staffed, there was just a director. And then they added a couple other staff positions down the road. To be fair, when we're talking about a fee, we're not looking to make a profit on it, first of all. We're just looking to recoup what time is spent on it. I think you'd find, and we had the opportunity to discuss it with industry, it's a rather modest fee, and I think that's something, if it turned out to be $10 or $15 a year, if that's the difference in going or no going on a project, I don't know if that's the part that moves the needle for someone making a decision, if that amount. Certainly looking at the other fees that are assessed along the way through the program, I think you're going to find that what we end up coming up with, and again, we want to talk with industry and work it through, this would be very low on the end of the fees that are charged.
All right, well, I mean, the only reason the tax collectors are, are assessing a fee is because they're authorized under state
Correct.
statute to do that. And I
Correct.
like Palm Beach County being a trendsetter. We've been a trendsetter on a lot of initiatives that we've taken on. Being the first county in the state to charge a fee is not a position that I want to be in, so I don't support that at this time. I would also tell you that having been in leadership on the executive board of the Association of Counties, now I'm in my 5th year of being on that executive board as the immediate past president. So I have the benefit of sitting across all of the different policy committees that the association has and looking at all of the proposals for legislative action that come in year after year. This is not an issue that has risen to that level. And so I think we're trying to make a whole lot of ado about something that's not a problem. So I support, other than the fee, the conversations with the tax collector and with industry to try to make some tweaks to our ordinance and make it stronger and make it better. But in terms of the additional consumer protections, I think we need to be very careful. A consumer in Sarasota County should be equally protected as a consumer in Palm Beach County. And I really think that rather than those consumer protections should be on a statewide level. And so I would prefer that we direct our legislative affairs team at the appropriate time to engage with our state association in taking on statewide consumer protections. So, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Commissioner McKinley, Commissioner Weiss, and then Sachs.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, I have to say, from a consumer protection perspective, I think the county is way ahead, way out in front of other jurisdictions in providing additional oversights as it relates to the consumers. I mean, you don't get this level of oversight even when you're borrowing money from banks, not on the consumer side. There's nobody calling you up and reminding you and asking you, do you really want to do this? They're just happy to get you to sign whatever documents. And oh, by the way, you can do that electronically on your computer, on your smartphone or whatever, and literally millions of dollars get transferred between entities, based on a digital signature. So I think there's a lot more in place on this than there are in other instruments that people have access to. I think that, on this product, you can't get cash out of it. I mean, you can go to a home equity line and people borrow, well, they don't have to do anything with the money. They just give them the cash and they can go, as we saw a few years ago, people were buying boats and big screen TVs and cars and paying cash for them, and then when the market went upside down, they were in severe trouble. At least with this product, that's not going to happen. It's not even a possibility to happen because there is no cash being transferred directly to the consumer. So it does actually go to where the work is being needed, and if it's a roof. And I have concerns as well. I mean, the insurance companies, as we know, this last season, canceled all sorts of policies in asking for exorbitant rates if your roof was under 15, it was 15 years or older. Roof could be in fine shape, and people are having to go out and get them replaced. And not everybody has access to being able to get a decent loan out of the bank, nor the time and the efforts that it takes to get a bank loan. I mean, today, trying to get a mortgage today, good luck, with coming up with all the documentation and so forth. And there's a lot of people here in our community that simply couldn't qualify for that kind of a loan. So I see, and as it relates to the fee for our staff or not, I mean, they've asked for a liaison, I think, or you guys created, or they did?
Tax collector did.
You guys created that, and you're taking that out of your fee. I mean, is there anything we can do to reduce the workload on your staff and maybe come up with some ideas on that too?
I think at the end of the day, we're enforcing the county's ordinance, and we have our requirements.
If we can modify the ordinance to reduce the workload on your staff.
We can definitely look as we contemplate this, but I think.
To do that.
I understand, and I think part of what our discussion here as well is, as it evolves, you're looking at more consumer protections or modifying the consumer protection as to make them stronger. Part of it goes to the reporting and some other things. We can certainly look at.
It seems like you've got two people looking at the reporting now. You've got the tax collector's office looking at it, and they've got a person that they've brought on. Maybe there's less that because they're taking it over.
We could absolutely look at it. I think if we did anything from our perspective, we would be lessening our obligations in our ordinance, just to speak generally to that point. But we could look at sharing efficiencies
They're going to
taking
have
a look at
full-time
that.
people now working on it. Okay, thanks.
All right, Madam Administrator, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to ask the board to give us an opportunity to go back, not only work with industry, but address this issue as far as the fee is concerned, and work with the tax collector's office, because a lot of the requirements and onus of following through and making sure things are implemented in our ordinance falls on on staff. We're the people you're going to be asking the questions of. And so I'd like to be able to make sure that we've got appropriate staffing. We're adding additional workload to the Office of Resiliency, and it's only 3 people. They're handling a lot when it comes to this challenge. So I'd like an opportunity to go back, talk to industry, work with the tax collector where we can reduce responsibility. We will. But at the end of the day, it is our staff that this board is going to hold responsible for ensuring the ordinances is followed. So if we can reduce the workload required of staff in the ordinance, that will be a major plus. But right now, that office is really taxed and spread thin with the additional work that has been added over the years. Excellent work, and they are doing an excellent job. But we are a bit concerned if we continue to add additional responsibilities. Collecting that fee would also help in offsetting the cost if we need to add additional staff for that office, not just for this program, but the overall responsibility that continue to go with this office.
All right, very good. And Commissioner Sacks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I think to summarize, what it comes down to is this. I was in the Senate, and I think Senator Bogdanoff was with me, when we passed this idea of being able to make affordable to those families in Florida energy-saving devices, homes, residences, and commercial. And we wanted to make it affordable and available to everybody in the state. And what we did is we made the counties, as Virginia Baker said, our county administrator, it's up to us to be able to facilitate this. Now, this is important for us to understand, is that there's no check on whether families are able to afford this increased assessment. There's no check on whether families are able to afford the increased assessment. That's not the job of PACE, but it should be the job of somebody to make sure that when you look at the amounts of money that people will have to pay, it's only $136 when it comes to somebody who's working with PACE. These are not people who can go out and get a loan from the bank and put a $100,000 energy-saving device on their roof. These are people who can't afford it. This is for them. But we as a county now, we've got this great idea. It's done all over. We took it from Berkeley, California. It was great. It's a great idea. Still is a great idea. But it's up to the county now, and I'm looking at Ms. Houston and Mr. Rutter. It's up to us to be able to make sure that the application is reasonable, is economically feasible for the people of Palm Beach County. Tax collector is bearing the load, But the person who really pays is not the tax collector. It's the Palm Beach County family. So what we need to do, just to simplify this, great idea, 67 counties could have it, but our county has to make sure that the Office of Resiliency, and Ms. Houston, you don't have that many people in your office anyways, but we need to make sure that it is done in a fiscally responsible way for the people of Palm Beach County. And that's a task that you'll have and that we will help you with it. But I don't want to definitely denigrate the idea. The idea is great, and I think that it's an assessment that we need to work on making sure that it is economically feasible for the people. Because your office, Ms. Gannon, shouldn't have to bear the brunt, and neither should any of our staff here in the county. So the bottom line is, let's work on how we can make this seamless in terms of making these assessments to the people of Palm Beach County who need this. These are the families who need these energy savings devices, and we need it for our insurance industry, and we need it, really for our state to move forward in the new century. So I think it's a good idea. Just let's work on getting it economically feasible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sachs. Commissioner Bernardi, do you have any further closing comments?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
All right, very good. And I'll turn it over now to Mr. Rudder and our tax collector for any, if you need further clarity, Mr. Rudder. It seems like we're also in agreement in terms of a little bit of bifurcation between residential and commercial and how they're treated. You recognize, sir?
Yes, sir. And just to clarify the points, I was going to certainly need to do the research for the board, get back to you on the capping of the interest rates. I've got a note for commercial versus residential, the bifurcation, and explore that part and how it can be done. Continue working with industry on a lot of the larger points as well. The fee issue we've discussed, and finding a way that would include working with the tax collector's office and understanding functionality, what each of us does, and in working up a number. And then I've also got continuing efforts working with the tax collector and their new staffing. I think that would be a big one that's evolved today, and understanding the board's point of not both doing the same tasks, but both doing our appropriate and required tasks, and being able to be really clear with each other that we're not duplicating efforts, but we're all doing what we need to be doing. And if there's an ability to eliminate duplication, we will bring that back as one of the solutions.
Very good, well said. Madam Tax Collector.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our concern about this program has always been that the details are bad, that nobody seems to be responsible for getting the details right, as we saw with our analysis. This is a great program if it works, and I agree with Commissioner Sachs. The folks in this county need it, and there are some that need it more than others do, but we have been committed to this, fixing this and making it work for our office, and much more efficient than it has in the past, because it's been a challenging program to administer from our perspective. So our program we put together, we actually looked at Pasco County. Senator Fasano has put the same kind of program. We tweaked it, and there are many other tax collectors now looking at this because of the issues that they've had in their offices administering this program. Thank you.
Very well, thank you. And thank you to you and your staff and your office at large for all the great work and illumination of the issues. Thank you to the members of industry for continuing to work with the board and our professional staff. We look forward to having a final product. And that will conclude the workshop portion of our agenda. I want to give time to my colleagues to make some comments, but let me start with the county administrator for any final comments before we adjourn.
I have none. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. County attorney.
No comments.
Commissioner McKinley.
I've said enough today. No comments.
Commissioner Marino.
No comments, thank you.
Commissioner Weiss.
No comments.
Commissioner Sachs.
I have a comment.
Oh, man, we almost set a record. We almost set a record.
Not going to eat yet. But I motion to approve declaring October 2021 Domestic Violence Awareness Month by proclamation of the Board of County Commissioners.
Second.
Is it an off-site proclamation or here in chambers?
Offsite.
Here, off-site?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Sacks, seconded by Commissioner McKinley for off-site proclamation. No further comments by members of the board. All in favor, all opposed. That item passes 6-0. All right. Commissioner Bernard, you recognize, sir.
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. I have no comments, so the Board of County Commissioners is adjourned. Thank you.